Richard Wartell was back at Unit 42. They used to have their own hacking competition, their own reversing thing. What was it? Damn, the name's gonna come to me. But yeah, people showed up with the gummy bears, and we were in Denver. You were supposed to be at that VB. You couldn't make it to that one, Kostin. And then Ryan, me, a bunch of other folks. It was interesting times.
All I remember is
times.
We were supposed to write this paper on something. What was a fourth party collection or one of those? Mm-hmm. And we were like maybe 1 page long. And then lo and behold, like 24 hours later, you have like 50 pages out of that 1 page. And that was before LLMs and And I was like, what's going on?
I had an easier time writing before all this LLM shit. I would just sit down and like, it would be like 14 pages in one night. You just blah. You never want to look at it again.
Good morning, everyone. This is the Three Buddy Problem, episode 91 on Saturday, March 28 at 9:07 a.m. here on the West Coast. The show this week is presented by TLP Black. Kostin, what do those guys do?
The best things you can imagine. Starting with threat intelligence, incident response trainings, anything you need.
Anything you need on the threat intel front, check them out, tlpblack.net. Thank you guys for supporting the show and sponsoring the podcast. Just a quick house cleaning note, we've started uploading the video recordings to Spotify. So you can be able to watch the show on Spotify and YouTube. If you're on Spotify, leave one of those ratings and a review if you like the show. If you don't like the show, tell us why. Help spread the word. That's it for the introductions. Juanito.
If they don't like it, we don't need to hear this.
That's what I'm saying. If you don't like it, don't leave a review.
Don't leave a review. Just we'll live with it.
Juanito is back from San Francisco, back-to-back weeks out in the belly of the beast, in the belly of the AI beast. You want to give us a quick recap of? Did you make it out to RSA at all?
I did not. That was the best trip. It was so great to go to San Francisco and not deal with any of the RSA bullshit whatsoever.
So what were you doing
there? Meetings. I had to go meet with some folks. Some of the AI Mecca was beckoning in its own interesting way. And to that effect, Thursday we had a really like a neat little happy hour that OpenAI put together. To be fair, I think it was really interesting, right? Like this one was clearly different. I think maybe like a third of the people there were like very technical people who had most of them been there the year before. And we were expecting kind of like the Dave Vitale event that we had last time where it was like a full day and like
Sama
talks.
Showed up.
And Sama shows up and like, it was like, they revealed Aardvark for the first time. And this time it was like clearly like had been organized by like gov policy folks. And it was like a happy hour. It was like a third of us were technical people. And then like all these like European government folks. But Rob Joyce gave a short talk, and we got an interesting talk from someone over at Sandia. It was just very cool to kind of hear how these things are being used in those spots, and then hang out with the usual suspects.
What do you mean by those spots? Is that like offensive use or defensive use?
No. I mean, I think just general use, right? Like when you think about a place like Sandia, like Sandia's offensive interests are far more concrete, right? Like it's like nuclear weapons, right? Or Los Alamos. And sorry, it was somebody from Los Alamos, not Sandia. That's my bad. Somebody from Los Alamos, which, more readily identify with like nuclear weapons and stuff rather than anything to do with cyber. But of course, like AI is being used like heavily in all the national labs. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know where this is, but one of the more interesting things we heard around AI with this administration was this idea of, I think it was the Genesis mission or whatever, that we were going to create a closed loop AI research lab with the national, like by using the national laboratories. Like, you guys didn't hear this? Like, it was like the cool thing for a second was the Trump administration said that we were going to create like a closed loop AI research thing. Don't look at me like that. Like I fucking make this shit up. It was in the news. I don't know.
Last week or when was it?
No, this was like a while back. Like this was like a thing.
Nobody remembers stuff from a while back.
Like
Wow.
we don't remember stuff from last week, so
That's fair.
One of the
Yeah, it was
fun
launched
week
November.
did not see any big announcements that shook things up at RSA. I didn't see any big reporting on any big talks, any big companies doing any announcements beyond Google announcing their cyber disruption unit at RSA, which I don't understand what is new about what they're doing. They're just like, they're doing what Microsoft has done with this digital crimes unit for many, many years, but they've, I don't know, is this all PR or do you think there's something cooking there with Google and this?
Look, I first of all, I'm not surprised that there are no big announcements. I'm actually glad that there are no big announcements at RSA. It just means we're getting a little more real and honest about the fact that like RSA is like a pointless event for salespeople. It has nothing to do with anything in security, and like it's a waste of a news cycle to try to put anything out there that's actually meaningful. As far as like the Google thing, I don't want to just lump it all in with like, oh, this is the same as like Microsoft's DCU or whatever, because frankly, like Microsoft, those people didn't do shit. Like, not really, right? It was like a lot of grandstanding. But with Google, I don't want to be cynical and right off the bat say, oh, they're not going to do anything. Like, there's no reason to say that. So I'm excited. Like, I would like to be pleasantly surprised, right? Like, it's Mandiant people that are putting this together, like in whatever this new GTIG organization. So presumably there's people in the room that know what it means to do like meaningful disruption stuff. So no, I don't want to shit on it. I'd like to be excited. And then in like 2 weeks, if like they don't do anything, like in 6 months, if they don't do shit, or like it's just like a PR, like press release mill, then, I'll be disappointed, but I don't want to come into it cynically. Like there is a lot for that organization to do.
Well, let me lay out what was announced at RSA. Sandra Joyce did one of the small keynotes. The video is up on YouTube, and I'll put a link in the description. Google launched a new disruptive cyber unit under its threat intelligence group. The unit plans to use legal tools, things like court orders, infrastructure takedowns, public exposure of threat actors to actively impede hacker operations. But they're emphatic that this is not hacking back. So my question is, like, what is new? They're already doing all of these, using court orders, doing infrastructure takedowns, publicly exposing threat actors. Like, they're already doing this. Every month I get a new Europol statement that all these companies lined up and we took something offline. Why should I stop?
Don't overgeneralize it like that, because look, when you do that, you're taking away the motivation for these people to try to do anything they weren't already doing. The truth is, they weren't, like, them and Microsoft and anybody else, nobody's doing nearly enough of what they should be doing in this shit.
Give me that then. What is this should be doing? What are you expecting? What are you expecting beyond what we're having right now?
So look, frankly, everybody has a greater duty of responsibility to take ownership and use the resources that they've got to maintain not just their ecosystem, but ideally the broader security of the internet. And there's a lot of these companies that have a really outsized capability as far as the whole of the internet infrastructure goes, especially like when you're a cloud provider, when you're an ISP, when you're a telco, when you're like, when you're a Google, right? Like the things that you touch, the things that you see are drastically outsized for what we normally talk about. Like if Google wanted to null route some shit, if Google wanted to take away certain kinds of hosting, if Google wanted to downrank certain types of links from showing up in certain situations, if they wanted to use their AdSense profiling data to like attribute attackers, if they wanted to use their payment information to figure out how people are doing registrations, if they like the sheer scale of everything that Google controls and touches means that they have a ridiculously outsized impact if they wanted to. If they really said, hey, the gloves are off, and like anyone who's doing this kind of fraud or this kind of activity or this kind of cybercrime, we're going to figure out a way to make their lives hard in any way we can. Not just like not just in, we're going to release some IOCs and a little blog post. Like, we are actually going to go try to, like, fuck with their payment mechanisms and fuck with their hosting mechanisms and fuck with the way that you can, like, can you route things here? We're going to block you through all of Chrome. Like, they have so many layers.
So we need a unit to do that? Like, why aren't they doing that now? I mean, I want to climb the stairs with you, because there's John Hultquist
so, like,
and Mandiant.
Sour old man on us that, like, there's nothing that we can impress you with. Nothing is good enough, Ryan.
I want to climb the stairs with you. I have massive respect for folks like John Hultquist. I have massive respect for the Mandiant folks. I know folks in these organizations that are doing amazing work. I'm just trying to understand what is new. Why do we need a cyber disruption unit? Why aren't they doing all of this shit now anyway?
So my point is not that they shouldn't have already been doing it, but they hadn't been doing it. And now there's people who are saying they're going to do. I'm not saying that it's not that they shouldn't have been doing this. This whole podcast has been 90 episodes of me yelling at all these companies going, why aren't you doing this? So I agree with you that they should have been doing it, but they hadn't. So the fact that now they're like, hey, we're going to, I'm like, that's fucking great, guys. Like, I'm so glad you're here. I welcome you. I support your endeavors. Godspeed to you. And like, I just don't want to go sour on it, because then if you do it that way, what you get is, it's just the same shit. No one's going to credit us for any of it. We're not going to get any marketing for it. Nobody believes us when we say we're going to do anything better. So why do anything better? Let's just be Microsoft. Let's just, it's fine. Let's just be Microsoft. Microsoft, won't do much of anything, and they'll still take the bow, and they'll create the unit. It won't do much of anything. And then they'll like release the press releases. You go, well, these aren't really meaningful. They go, oh, well, fuck you. It doesn't matter, right? And then they'll just keep going. So like, Microsoft is just like in full IDGAF mode. So I don't want to treat Google that way. I don't want to treat everybody else that way, because no, we're not going soft. We're giving them we got to give them the opportunity to do better. Yeah. You can't be so sour, Ryan. Come on.
Let's hear from Costin. Costin, settle us down for a second. Settle both of us down for a second.
Yeah,
is this something or is this nothing? Are you enthused? Are you optimistic that the launch of a cyber disruption unit out of the Google Threat Intelligence Group will somehow move the needle? And what are your expectations?
I think you're asking the wrong question. The right question to ask here is why. And the reason why we are asking the question why is because we want to understand why this new unit is announced now. And if you ask me, the reason to have something like this is always return on investment. You want to be able to quantize and to understand what kind of ROI you get out of that. And it happened to us, by the way, in the past, when people were saying, why do we need to go and speak at Virus Bulletin? Why do we need to publish blog posts? Why do we need to do that? Actually, our goal is detection. Our goal is increasing the protection of our customers. And the moment that you have a separate unit with their own separate budget, and their separate budget is for disruption. Their goals, their targets, their MBOs, as we used to call them, management by objectives, they are 9x5 matrix, like as we used to have these goals 9x5, would be disruption. And then I think it's a lot easier to give them the tools they need for all these things. And what are the tools? Easy. To maybe organize some private events, to invite other researchers, to invite people from ISPs, to put together some private resource where they share block lists that ISPs can use for quick, immediate takedowns. They can, let's say, have additional budget to send their people to other conferences like FIRST or the JP-CERT conference or RISE, Team Comedy, Virus Bulletin, and so on, where they can present on their private discoveries, if that is even possible, and work with other researchers to achieve their mission. But when you have it as a separate division, then with their own separate budget, then it's much easier to justify all those things that I just mentioned. And if you put them like this, these are your objectives. You can't say like, how many 0 days did you guys find this quarter? Well, we didn't really find any 0 days because we were like shutting down Chucky and LeakBase. And like, but this is not our goal. Our goal is to find 0 days and protect our customers. No. And I think the reason to have this now is exactly that, to justify budgets and then to do something that really makes a difference in a way that has a return on investment.
That's
Are
not
you
nothing.
optimistic that it moves the needle?
If it moves the needle, I think it depends what the needle is. And if one company, well, two now, right? Now let's say there's a few more. If just a handful of companies do this, the needle doesn't move much. But then if other companies see Google's example and say, whoa, Google just launched a disruption unit. Shouldn't we have our own disruption unit of 3 guys and a junior? Let's do
With
it.
some
What is the budget for them? Like, I don't know, $500,000. Let's do it. And then when you have, let's say, 50 of these disruption units, then it will be, fire and hell for cyber criminals. It'll be like the discombobulator of cyber for all these criminals, cyber criminals everywhere.
Dude, you look, it's not the budget thing is not nothing, precisely because I think we need to think about this almost like in a slightly like metaphysical sense, right? Nothing is self-sustaining, right? If you expect to see an outcome in any repeatable fashion, something has to be putting energy into that, right? If it's an automation, then we have found ways to use electricity to pump life into a certain outcome. If it can't be automated, then it's a matter of authorities and responsibilities. So when we say this company should have already been doing this or needs to be doing this thing, and that's like a forever activity, like this is a recurring forever activity, then the question is, it's not like, are they willing to do it, but rather, is there somebody assigned to do this? And, if there isn't a team whose job it is to do X, then we can't expect something to happen in a recurring fashion or in a sustained fashion, right? Like Google has the talent to do to do vulnerability discovery. It has the talent. It always has had the talent. But because it has Project Zero, we say, oh, Google has a commitment to doing this in a sustained fashion because there's a group of people who are getting paid to do this every single day, right? And that's the thing with this disruption notion. There should have always been in my utopia, in my perfect world of responsible ownership, there should have always been an understanding that if you are an infrastructure maintainer, that you have an outsized responsibility for the well-being of the internet that isn't just like, well, not my table, not my monkeys, right? Like, not my problem. You're supposed to be maintaining the health of this place the same way that like Cloudflare has to and telcos have to and everybody does. And a lot of the AV companies and EDR companies have also always liked taking up that mantle. It was a feel-good thing, but it was also part of our jobs. Like if we say we're going to secure people, you can't like just leave the environment rotting and say it's okay though, like the people who pay for our product, they're fine, everything else is fucking radioactive, but like we're okay. Like you can't build on that. However, a lot of these companies have just not done that. Like a lot of the cloud providers have just basically turned a complete blind eye to what's being hosted on their environments, right? If it's not massively egregious, you're like, oh, well, it's not our place to look at what these, what's running on our clouds, right? Stuff like that. So, we always expected better of them, but it just was not the way things were done. It was just not the way that business was done. And, in some places have taken it up, either because they think it's the right thing, or in some cases because certain people are, enriching themselves unbeknownst to their employers. But like there are other places that just never took this up at all. And I'm all for seeing a full-on unit the same way that Project Zero is a full-on thing, in which case you go, hey, we're willing to invest into this and it means you're going to, do X, Y, and Z. And if the only payoff those people are going to get is good publicity, I think we have a responsibility to like really sing their praises when they do some good shit. So do I think this moves the needle right now? No, not right now, but I expect to see it move the needle. And if it doesn't, well, I'll be pretty disappointed. But like, it's an opportunity for some people to go like take that license and do some shit. And I can't think of a cooler place to do it than at Google, where you could go call up like, I don't know, 8.8.8.8 and say, hey guys, from this point forward, like, can we just do like some rapid DNS blocking of like shitty domains? And they're like, yeah, why not? Right? Like, you have so many different ways that you can tackle disruption. Maybe it's not for everybody, but hey, everybody that uses 8.8.8.8, like Handala domains are just never gonna, like, they're not gonna resolve for you, right? Like, you're good. Like, stuff like that is it's minor, but it's meaningful, it's deeply impactful, and it's all sitting in the same house. You just need somebody who has the license to like run around between places and make that shit happen.
This is also top of mind because of the notion of offensive cyber, private sector being kind of incentivized to do offensive cyber. Google has made it clear this is not hacking back at all. This is just disruption, kind of like what you just described there. It comes at the same time that the Trump administration is saying this whole letters of marque thing about giving people think they're kind of pouring cold water on cyber letters of marque. What do you make of it? Are we having a conversation in a vacuum that makes things interesting and exciting, but none of this is really happening? Is there like the new cybersecurity strategy document, like, you know, emphasizes and stresses this, incentivizing the private sector to do,
Yeah.
I don't know what you call it.
I don't know that they call it something in particular. I mean, honestly, the new cyber strategy is fairly simple to, you know, in the sense of, right, like you've got like a 2-page document, right? Like it's not the kind of tome that we got from the previous one. I think it's just, you know, kind of like stating how they want to go about things going forward. The whole cyber letters of marque thing, it surprises me that they're pouring water on it. Like on some level, and another it doesn't. Like on one level it does because it's what we've heard so like consistently coming out of like the NSC folks in this administration, that we were just going to like unshackle the offensive side of things. And there are folks who have made some pretty big investments, I think, on the premise that this was going to happen. So if it isn't, you know, it's curious. That said, right, like, fine, maybe it's not letters of marque, but like, do you decriminalize certain things? Do you allow certain kinds of authorities in the IC? I don't know, right? Like, letters of marque is only one way of going about it, and frankly, I think I always thought it was like a kind of problematic way of going about this. But there is no world where this problem can be meaningfully tackled without the private sector, right? There just isn't. So offensive to me always felt like a sideshow, but it's like the sexy militarized way of, like, think about what we're saying, right? If you really want like public-private partnership in the sense of, hey, we're gonna tell the private sector to do their fucking jobs and go clean up their mess when something's going wrong, or to help us enforce, even if it's something that's not directly their business priority, but we're like, hey, this shitty thing is happening and you have an opportunity to help us make it not happen. In the kind of like lame lefty administration framing, you would go, oh, regulation, and everyone goes, oh, ew, regulation. Or like, oh, friendship, and they go, oh, lame, friendship. But in a right-wing administration, right, you go, hey, come like blow up some bad people with us. And you go, yeah, we'll blow up some bad people with you. It's the same shit. We're just saying, please like nix some domains and like grab the contents of these virtual private servers, and like, can you null route some stuff for us? And like, what intel do you have? But it's like, you know, but you dress it up in the right colors and you say, hey, let's, you know, come do some cool shit with us. Right.
Don't forget the fact that any kind of announcement of, expansion, new operations looks very good for investors. When your company is doing well, you launch new divisions, new products, new ideas, new groups, when your company is not doing well, you fire all your people in the States, you put Europe and Middle East under the same manager, or Latin America and Russia under the same manager, or who knows. But when you're doing very well, you expand and you announce new divisions. So it also sends a good message to investors. And the other thing you need to like something I think also something that is kind of maybe at play here is, of course, that budgets matter. Of course, that it all kind of revolves around the idea of investments of money, but also kind of shaping the discussion is also very valuable. So, for instance, like if I were Apple right now, I would launch one of these cyber disruption divisions. Just imagine if Apple disrupted Coruna before it turned into the shit that it has become. Or imagine if they disrupted Darksword before it turned into the chaos and mess that we have now. And if I was Apple,
next RSA for that announcement, bro.
Well, hopefully no. Maybe they can do it sooner. But if I were Apple, I would launch the Apple Cyber Disruption Unit.
Do you see the bullshit though, right? You see, Juanito, why I'm calling it bullshit,
shaping
right?
the discussion.
It's like, why aren't we doing this shit right now?
To shape discussion.
You. This is where you gotta. You take your wins where you can get them, Ryan, right? Like you gotta just.
I don't know, man. We're giving room to these multi-billion-dollar companies to come and do their PR, and we should applaud it. When the stuff that they're talking about is like what we expect from these big vendors right now. If you're swords of this thing that's become a utility, like you always talk about, we always say Cloudflare is a great sword of what it owns. We should expect this from Google. Like my expectations have to be higher.
I think they, your expectations should be higher. My expectations are pretty high. I think that the difference here is simply, look, they have already shown you that they can smile in your face and lie and do whatever and be irresponsible, and no one's going to say shit to them. So if somebody's willing to, like, if something's gonna happen now, like for whatever reason, right? If they're willing to change because it benefits them, or because it's Starlink is in retrograde and they just feel a little bit different this year, like this time around, I don't care, right? Like at no point is the personhood of a mega corporation suddenly going to transform into like a kind steward. It's all about leaders and leadership. And so far, we've seen, pretty weak leadership in most of these places. And if there's something that motivates that weak leadership to act in line with what we think is good, I'm not going to question its moral fiber. I'm not going to question, if it's coming for the right reasons, because I know it isn't. And I don't need it to be coming for the right reasons. I just need it to be done, right?
Fair enough. Just to close the loop on RSA, I want to bring attention to a blog post written by Haroon Meer. Haroon from ThinkScanary, a sponsor of this podcast. Shout out to ThinkScanary. Haroon has a really interesting recap of the RSA thing. Very short, easy to read article that basically says, listen, none of us don't really know what's going on. Everyone in the AI world is in this holding pattern. And if you reality check it, no one is quite sure where it goes. And from 6 months to 6 months, it changes drastically. At the same time, you have entire thousands of vendors on a show floor with a solution for everything, and AI is just like the rage. Is this all, Juanito, when you get a feel for, you and I were in San Francisco in the middle of that AI beast for Nebula Fog, and when you go back this time, you're hanging out with the OpenAI people and so on. Is there a sense that we're completely disconnected, or this is just par for the course with how VCs fund companies and build hype, and is that just that loop playing out in one corner while the rest of us are trying to figure out what's going on? What is your take from Haroon's piece?
I really appreciated Haroon's piece. I think he's, I said he's saying the quiet obvious part out loud, and I'm happy for it, because I don't like deluding myself. I don't enjoy self-delusion. I don't enjoy seeing something differently just because it's uncomfortable to just accept it for what it is. The uncomfortable truth that I think we have all been speaking to and we have all been living for some time now is that the security space got hijacked by people with dollar signs in their eyes, maybe 10, a little less than 10 years ago. And I say hijacked because it's not that we suddenly had a lot of investment. It's not that I'm against the involvement of big corporations. It's not that I am against companies making money and being successful. I think it's important to make money and be successful in order to sustain yourself, to have the freedom to do cool things, to have the resources to invest in R&D, right? Like, it's important to have money to spend to do cool things. And if you are on the ropes, like, no, you're not going to be able to make some good decisions. So I'm all for success. The real issue here is that the VCs and the big like company graveyards, Thoma Bravo and Cisco and whatever, like what we saw was a massive consolidation that was essentially the result of, Ryan, like you like to refer to this whole VC mechanism as a Ponzi scheme, and it feels harsh, but frankly, like, I remember Chamath Palihapitiya's videos, like his talks that you sent me, maybe like 3-4 years ago. And at that time, I think Chamath was very open about the fact that like the VC ecosystem was basically a giant like pyramid scheme where, the motivation was fairly short term. I got you to take some money, and then it was my goal was to make you look as attractive as possible so that somebody would come give you a Series A. And at that point, I made my money. And then, this next person their goal is to get you to a Series B so that they can make their money, and so on and so forth. And it's basically like a greater fool kind of
a proven cycle.
It's a proven cycle, and what we were seeing, I think that the real issue at that point is like there's not necessarily anything wrong with the bankers looking to make money along the way. The problem was that in the process, they were over-rotating these companies to spend these massive amounts of money that they were forcing into their hands, to spend it not building products, not improving customer experience, not trying to solve some kind of meaningful problem, but just to spend it on marketing and hype building so that the brand was so recognizable that, of course, they would get a big Series B, and of course they would get a big Series C, and of course they would IPO, or of course they would get bought up by somebody else because, everybody knows this company. So what you got was a lot of very big, very notorious, very shitty, hollow companies that really didn't have a whole lot going for them, and that really didn't, they weren't meaningfully improving. Like, I used to come out and like talk about certain companies and I would rank on them, and people would be like, how could you say that? I mean, they're so-and-so, right? Like, they're this big security company. Of course they're doing better than that. And I'd be like, no, like, you're assuming that they are because they're big and because they have money and because they've hired all these people. So surely they must be. And it's like, no, there's no surely. The people who manage your finances have put you in a position where in order to survive, you need to keep begging for more money. They have put you in a position where revenue is something almost undesirable, so that you are hooked on them. You're never going to make enough money to like be self-sustaining, right? You're just hooked on this treadmill of easy investment. And it means that you're not getting any better. Your customers aren't getting anything better. You're acting like a private equity firm, even though you're not. Right? Like, you're just, misallocating all this stuff. And then ultimately, somebody's always left holding the bag, right? Because especially once IPOs became less of an option, right? Like, funnily enough, SentinelOne had the last great cybersecurity IPO. We were the biggest cybersecurity IPO of all time. And then the economy fucking cratered, right? Like, so it was the last one you got. And now what you hear from investors is, yeah, IPOs are not really like a really desirable thing, maybe in the future. So instead you're getting these like big holding company private equity things where you get, like a bunch of companies get sort of merged together, you strip them for parts, like a Broadcom type thing, right? And then you look for a future where you find some way to invest it, but it basically means somebody has to be the one left holding the bag who's willing to buy that overpriced, over bloated piece of shit company once it's like nobody's willing to give them investment anymore. So now like Broadcom gets to buy it or so and so gets to buy it, and then you just try to like rearrange parts in a way that make it seem profitable and spin it out. At no point of any of that shit has somebody built a security product or focused on fixing a security problem or created a self-sustaining something or other.
And that's the field walk in the RSA show floor I get from Haroon. It's like nobody's really building anything meaningful. Nobody knows what they're building for because we're still trying to figure out how does this thing scale? What are we going to use it for? The entire industry is in this holding pattern, looking from left to right to see where it all shakes out. But we have this entire hype cycle. And I'll just close the thought with this. When COVID hit, and the public markets deteriorated for IPOs, and we started to see companies prioritize revenue, prioritize the right things. And now with AI and the hype cycle again, now we're starting to see that move away from that. It's just free money being poured everywhere. Companies are raising hundreds of millions of dollars. They have like, I don't know, $10 million in revenue, $5 million in revenue, raising $100 million rounds. Well, I mean, in sales.
Nobody wants any revenue, bro.
Virtual revenue.
It's crazy.
Like selling to Oracle, who's selling to Nvidia, who's selling to you, who are selling to Oracle.
The same money floats around in the same circle and everyone gets rich. It's crazy
I think, look, what you have to see is the forces, the issue people have in general, and most things in life right now, is that most things in our world are currently really, really big compounding systems. And we still think about things in causes and effects that are individual and in people with responsibilities. That's why we keep all staring at each other all day going, why aren't you doing something about this? And everybody is just like, I don't know what to do, right? Like, yes, because nobody can have the kind of impact that you need to have in order to handle a system. Like a system needs to be changed at a level of incentives. And the problem that you get with the security space and with the whole RSA floor and whatnot is we have created some really, really bad habits that were based on the way that easy money was coming into cybersecurity. We are all appalled at AI, but AI, what it did was it just took the darling spot away from cybersecurity. Before, you would just say cyber, and somebody would show up with $50 million. Now people say AI, and someone shows up with $50 million, and we're in cyber going, oh, look at that's fucking appalling. It's awful that's happening over there. Like, yeah.
So let's just say cyber plus AI and get $100 million instead.
My man, you just described Armaden and a bunch of other very real companies, right? And like, good for them, right? Like, you figured out the magic thing. The issue for me is not that you're taking a ton of money. I don't mind that you're taking a ton of money. It's just that if you listen to the people giving you that money, you are tying yourself to the tracks to have 10 trains run over you over and over and over again, because they are not setting you up for any kind of success. And there's certain business lines that are corrupted at their core when they take VC funding. For example, offensive tooling providers, right? Like the hacking teams and the Finn Fishers, they were doing fine until they started to take on €100 million euros in investment, and all of a sudden it wasn't good enough to sell to the countries around you. Like, what's the big difference between Azimuth and Hacking Team, right? I mean, they're not one-for-one products, right? Azimuth was building, the exploitation side of things. Hacking Team had exploits and more of a focus on a platform. But the whole point was, Azimuth continued to just sell to Five Eyes and to be a reliable partner, and they kept it small. I don't know if they ever took investment, but it was, like a 40-person company, right? So you're in a position where the numbers make sense and success continues to be success and you can make some sober decisions. Hacking Team started that way. And it gets to a point where all of a sudden it was like 90 or 100 million euro in investments. And all of a sudden you're talking about, I mean, fuck whatever revenue you were getting. How are you going to make these people 5x, 10x returns for that investment? And it's not going to be by selling to only reputable governments who happen to be willing to buy your tech. All of a sudden you're looking for new customers and you find them in fucking Ethiopia, right? Like some of these things are just not a raid for VC. And nobody is saying that. Nobody at the RSA floor is walking around going, well, these are the complete scams. And over here you have, the sovereign wealth funds trying to like pass themselves off as defense companies, even though really they're just here to
and Ivanti on the show floor selling cybersecurity products.
Yeah, those over there, I mean, I don't even know how to describe what those people are doing. That's just some shameless, lying.
The US government didn't show up either. Like there's so many pieces to the RSA story. The Jenny Stillia CEO of RSA has like shifted things and it's been politicized now, and I don't know. Enough of RSA shit. This man gave us the perfect segue to our next story, Costin, and I want you to jump in here because this is the story you've been waiting for.
Before you jump, give us some love in the chat if you're old enough to remember when the industry boycotted RSA and what was the reason, if you remember it.
Is that the RSA thing? When are you bringing up? There was one small hiccup when there were no women on the keynotes, and there were no. Do you remember this? And Stamos and these guys launched a competing conference called OurSA, OURSA, and had their own agenda going to kind of prove to the industry that we should do better. We're back to the same old square.
I don't remember. Sorry. No, I was thinking of some other reason why the industry boycotted RSA, the RSA conference. I mean. It had to do more with backdoors, and getting money from the government to put backdoors in certain things.
That was the old RSA, maybe when it used to be out in San Jose without this big, gigantic, multi-billion-dollar show floor, no?
No, I think you're referring to it was like Bruce Schneier era when we found out.
Bruce Schneier era.
Right, sorry, Bruce Schneier's still around. I'm just saying, Chuck Norris era. Never mind. Look, I am happy for RSA to take its rightful place as a place that doesn't fucking matter. That's
a good place to end it.
What I learned from 43 minutes of discussion is that Juan was in San Francisco at the time of RSA and he didn't go. This is what I learned.
What does that tell you exactly?
It's an important event for sure. Like I remember I was at RSA, when was it? 2015 or 16, I think it was, maybe 16. And it reminded me of, CeBIT was the European equivalent or version. There was also the Romanian one where for many years I was like a booth babe, staying at the booth explaining people about computer viruses with the cat, like it was our mascot, like a black cat. So I remember that, and I can tell you one thing for sure is that it helped a lot with sales for small companies. I don't know if it's also the case nowadays, but we were like small companies going to these events, and it not only like immediately you would see the boost in sales, and the Romanian version we were selling at the booth. Basically, we were selling packages. And we were selling hundreds, which for us was like more than we were selling in a month. In a month, we were selling maybe like 50 licenses. And at this event, we were selling hundreds.
Haroon has talked about this, about going on the show floor and the value he gets, like doing direct sales right there on the show floor. When you have something to show and you actually have a proper product that people wants to buy, right? That's there's a difference between going on the show floor with something meaningful that buyers want to really engage with, versus going on the show floor and you see agentic AI on every booth and nobody in the booth can explain what they do. It's like your head explodes.
Well, but it's been shit like that for years now, right? Like, and what's sad even for these sales folks, right? Because remember, those salespeople are making their money based on their sales, right? Like, so to some degree, like we can all shit on salespeople all day long, but like you you need them to be successful as a company. Like, you need good salespeople, and you need those people to do well. I don't give a shit about RSA, but they sure as shit do, because basically, as a salesperson, what I've gathered in security is if you make your pipeline essentially at RSA and Black Hat, and
Scanning
if you didn't
people's badges, yeah.
But no, it's not scanning badges. It's like the real shit is happening where? Like in the hotel rooms above, where like you get a meeting where this company that has this budget and this person from this other country who shows up, who's ready to spend, $40 million on whatever, or like ready to spend $900,000 on this EDR solution. And like those salespeople are killing themselves, right? Like, we don't see the same level of partying because they're trying to make their quotas. And the important thing is, if they don't, they have a pretty bad time. And if they don't, most companies have a pretty bad time. So like, as much as I'm happy to shit on RSA, just because, it's an annoying, kind of shameless racket, it's also kind of an important racket underlying our racket, right? So, you do have to consider what happens when that mechanism starts to flounder, right? Like I said earlier, right? Companies need to do well to be able to afford to let us do what we like to do. So as much as I want to shit on the sales side of things, like, if companies aren't making money, the researchers are not going to have a lovely time, right?
It's a pity you didn't go, because there was at least one story that I was curious to hear more about. I saw an advertising for Brandon Dixon's new company with him dressed in a ghillie suit. The company's name is Ant, like the ants from Lord of the Rings. So I was curious how their booth looked like and what was going on there.
Well, I have no idea about their booth, but I went to their hackathon. There was a hackathon.
I don't think they had a booth. I think they did have an AI. They had a hackathon to kind of show off different. This is ENT.ai, ENT.ai. You can go to their website. I might give you a little teaser. They're probably going to be sponsoring this show very soon. So we're big fans of Brandon and Ent. Go ahead.
We are, of course.
Before they're shilling, before anybody accuses us of shilling because they're sponsoring, right? Like,
shill quickly before
I'm going to shill before the money shows up, right? Which is probably the opposite of how business is done, but I'm not one of those people, right? Like, clearly. No, dude, I showed up to this hackathon, and it was Ent and Tenex, which is, Foster and a couple of other, cool friends
Tenex
have
being
been building.
Tenex, right?
Yeah. Tenex AI is one company, ENT.ai is another company. They're both in actually pretty similar spaces in the security sort of ecosystem. It was really interesting to see these two platforms side by side. Something that I really liked was, fuck the booths and whatever. They invited people to a hackathon, to a kind of like, to a CTF essentially. And they had a case, and they had loaded the data into both platforms, and you were supposed to essentially go threat hunting over this case and find like the sample, like, oh, what was the PowerShell script that ran, and what's the hash of that PowerShell script, and whatever. And you're doing it by jumping between these two environments and seeing how the data is presented. I thought, first of all, it was cool. Like, it's pretty, it's a smart way to get people to engage with your product. But more importantly, for me, I was sitting in the back and I'm going, these companies weren't here like a year ago. And look at the maturity of these platforms, which were pretty well developed. They were like nice to navigate.
They've raised a lot of money. I think Brandon has raised $20+ million for that. I mean, it's like it's not homebrewed.
Well, I'm not saying it's homebrewed, but it's certainly fast. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that they're like 2-bit outfit, right? It's not that somebody like, Brandon just sat there and like pulled this out of his ass and it's like a GitHub project. My point is just, it's fucking fast, right? Like, these things, they just collected, whatever money in the past however many months, and I'm sitting here using a platform and I'm, I have some thoughts about like, maybe you should add this or where's that, but this shit works and it shows good data. And like,
what do they do? Can you give us a big overview of like what is the problem they're looking to address?
Honestly, I want to talk about it, but frankly, I don't know how much I should. Like, let me. I don't want to screw over Brandon because, like, I know they were being very, like, kind of just
Well, they
popping out
showed
of
it off at
stealth.
RSA. I mean, they showed off the product at RSA. At least, at the very least, you can tell us at a high level what are they addressing.
So I'll say that it was pretty cool to see a platform that is showing, that is focusing on user behaviors and what is essentially like using this new AI stuff to take the same kind of tired old telemetry and instead of flooding you with a bunch of, semi-structured data points, it's showing you a sort of like behavioral rundown of what the users are doing, what the processes are doing, what the systems are doing. And, you can very quickly get a sense that, it inevitably will start to extrapolate to a point where you can start to talk about like the behavior of a fleet and the behavior of a network and what's abnormal in behavior rather than in these like atomic little things, right? And, I think it's a pretty natural evolution of where we've been going on the EDR space. And I'm excited to see it being built by people like Brandon and Steve Ginty and folks that like know their shit. They've built cool products before. They're good. Like they're kind of like the ideal founders. Like if I was a VC, you show me somebody people who started like very technical and then took the time to become like good business people, both at startup, then getting acquired, then getting mega acquired. And they, like Brandon became like proper business guy at these big places. So I can't think of a better founder to put my money on than somebody that came from a deep technical background, is still connected to it, but actually knows how to do business. Like that's usually where that last bit is usually where we all falter, which is, you're great technical founders, but you don't know how the fuck to run a company, right?
And he shared this with us when we had, just for the audience, episode 57. If you scroll back, episode 57, we had Brandon at our live episode at Black Hat in Las Vegas, talking about AI and the things he's been doing and the lessons learned from Microsoft over those years. And you get a sense that his brain had expanded beyond just the technical things and into the macro of creating, selling a business. So it'll be fascinating to watch. ENT.ai is one of the ones that we can root for because we know there are people there who are going to do good stuff. So shout out to Brandon and the folks over there. We're 52 minutes in and we're now going to get to our first story list. Fucking RSA dragged us into another direction. But
fucking RSA. Just like
here we are. Costin, you predicted a couple of weeks ago once the Google and the iVerify folks documented Coruna. You were looking out for the Kaspersky blog on this.
What I was saying that it should be ready by Monday, something like this. We were on a Friday, and I was saying like, yeah, if I was back at my good old job, I would be, jumping on this and push a blog on Monday, something like that.
A couple of weeks late.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work the same way now that you're not there, man. It's a different standard.
Well, let's start.
I know people just love it when we speak about good old times, right?
Oh my God.
The good old times.
Someone tweeted about us fucking around and talking about the good old times so lovingly and glowingly. I think people are still upset with us for that.
We'll keep doing that. Sorry to let you know. We'll keep doing that.
But wait a second, we got a secure list blog post. Maybe it's 3 weeks late. I'm not gonna. I'll let you guys talk about the quality of the blog in itself. But we did get a little bit of news here that the Coruna exploit kit is directly linked to Operation Triangulation. Kaspersky said they analyzed the kit from Google and the one that Google and iVerify disclosed on March 4th. And confirmed that its kernel exploit for two specific vulnerabilities, CVE 2023-32434 and CVE 2023-38606, is not just similar to the one from Operation Triangulation, it's actually an updated version of the exact same code. What did you learn from this, Costin, that stands out in terms of moving the story forward?
Well, first of all, I think good job to Boris Larin who wrote this blog. And it's interesting to note that when people were originally speculating, and we don't really know why they were actually speculating, probably they had some insider information or the likes that Triangulation and Coruna were related. So back in the days, Boris Larin actually, I think he went to X and posted that Simply that, they use the same vulnerabilities doesn't mean that these things are related, and vulnerabilities don't mean exploit, and people should differentiate between vulnerabilities and exploits, because for the same vulnerability you can have multiple exploits. So a few weeks later, I was like really surprised to read that actually Boris confirms that the vulnerability is exploited in the Operation Triangulation, and the new exploits part of Coruna is pretty much coming from the same source. And Coruna is essentially an updated toolkit. That's an improved, updated platform, which is definitely connection to Operation Triangulation. So 2 of those 5 exploits were developed after, and they've been kind of plugged into the same platform. That, it means that it's the same developers using the same code, the same platform, the same. And I think this was the main argument, that they're actually using the same libraries to develop them. You can see the same libraries being used in the Operation Triangulation kits and the Coruna exploitation framework. And to be honest, this kind of blog, and we know that only Boris Larin could have written it, because the triangulation framework is not publicly available. So while Coruna is available and it can be fetched from different sources, and Kaspersky managed to grab it from the internet because it was pretty much everywhere, especially like the Chinese version of it. It was everywhere, so it was easy to grab it, and they were essentially the only ones who could have compared.
Could do the overlay, right?
And overlay. And I think it's a pretty deep dive, and I can fully understand why it took 3 weeks or 2 weeks to analyze on Boris' side, and then to put together the blog and confirm. And what can I say? Respect for essentially going back and saying, yeah, they are related. And it seems that we were hit by a framework developed, which used the exploits developed by Trenchant, which leads, of course, to the next question is, can they sue Trenchant? Like,
why are you taking the question out of my mouth? Let me ask the question.
Please ask, so what is your...
Like, what is the next step? Like the natural next step here is, Kaspersky has been very, what's the word?
Litigious?
Litigious. Kaspersky has been quite litigious in the past around patent people, around like even the sanctions and being banned
BSI,
in the US.
Remember they sued BSI in Germany, right? Because of this BSI ban.
What do you think? Do you think there's a case here, Juanito, that Kaspersky could go to a private company like Trenchant and say, here's all the documentation that your code ended up compromising our machines?
So let me ask you something. A lawsuit occurs in a jurisdiction, the laws of a specific court. Are they suing Trenchant in the United States? Is that what we're suggesting?
Australia, maybe?
They want to, my point being, right, like, look, I think it's a funny thing to think about. It would be a hilarious thing to watch. It would be a pretty fucking stupid thing for Kaspersky to do, but they're, because what you're, anytime you sue somebody, that sounds cute, like it sounds empowering and cool to the person who doesn't have to foot the fucking legal bills. No, it's not exciting to pay for lawyers to win next to nothing. And at the end of the day, be exposed to discovery, right? Like when you do that, if you're going to go into a lawsuit you're not going in a lawsuit against some bullshit 2-bit company, bro. You're going into a lawsuit against a defense contractor, L3Harris, that can happily take that battle, that is made of lawyers, right? And you're basically giving them an avenue to act as an arm of defending A, the government they sold to, B, to essentially rake Kaspersky over the coals. Because what are they going to get, right? Like, if you wanted to go pound for pound, I'm sure L3Harris can outspend Kaspersky 4,000 times, if that's what they'd like to do. So, it's a funny thing to think about, but like, it's also like an amateur move that you would do if you just are not really thinking this shit through. Like, the courts are never fun for anything or anybody.
I remember when we had Dave Vitale on the show, and he talked about like the enormity of this Peter Williams case and the blast radius from all of this. And now we're seeing it play out in real time with just this kind of boom, boom here, boom, boom there. And you're just like, what the fuck, man?
And by the way, because it's a Friday when everyone is, let's say, not satisfied, unhappy, like it's not enough. What's missing from this blog, if you ask me, is a bit of geography telemetry. I thought that such a blog should include a bit more information about the water holes or where this was used. And I was thinking that maybe, something related to this can be found in the Kaspersky telemetry. So going back 1 year, 2 years, they can find
tell
more.
Boris,
We're telling. He's listening to us. We know he's listening.
Look, no judgment. It was just like, it took longer, and what came out of it had no like perspective. It was almost like you did it to take the technical claim of saying, yeah, look, it's the same thing. But
they're the only people who could do it, though, in reality, because they're the only people who can do the overlay properly.
They're the only people who could do it, but I was kind of I was expecting them to say what it means. The blog is just really technical, but it kind of buries the whole point of like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, yeah, there's these connections. I get it. What are you trying to say? Like, if you're going to say it, just say it, right? Like, you're saying what? That it was the same company that made these things? That like that triangulation must have been powered by, by L3 Harris, which means that it must have been one of their customers that did it. No, it's not. No, they haven't. No, they've said there's a technical connection, and then they didn't say what it means about them, about their attack, about the threat actor, about any of it. They just said there's a technical connection.
Well, let me put the onus on Kostin to clean up this report and make it make it more ideal.
I don't know that it's his to clean up at this point.
No, it's not his to clean up.
It's not your job, bro.
Not anymore.
No. Yeah, but I'm putting him back in time. What more would you have liked to see from here? You talked about victimology. Why is that important?
I think the victimology here would be the most important, and especially if they can, let's say, go back and say a few words about this Ukraine targeting, proving neutrality and the fact that they investigate all threats. I think that would be very important. And if they could even go farther back into January, February 2025 and find what other things were being deployed through Coruna or Coruna, I think that would be also within their capabilities. And maybe it's happening. I don't know. Maybe they have a private report which has a lot more information than this public one. But I agree with you on the conclusion side, and let me read this. As this case demonstrates once again the dangers associated with such malicious tools that lie in their potential wide usage. Originally developed for cyber espionage purposes, this framework is now being used by the cyber criminals. This is not the conclusion here. I disagree with the conclusion. The conclusion is that the triangulation from framework, whatever, it had a connection to the people who developed Coruna. I think that is the conclusion here. And that is the most important part. And this fact that it's been leaked, yeah, sure, we know it's been leaked. But there's another point here which I think it deserves further investigation, and I thought it was interesting. All these magic constants that appear throughout the code, like dead doof, dead food, all these kind of constants. I think there is fantastic potential there for finding more. And whenever I see magic constants in code, I bet that this is already happening on their side. They're deploying detection silence Yara rules for these magic numbers, for these constants, to try to find anything else that could be related, could be pluginable, could be working with this framework, could be a related project by the same people. And it's one of the practices, I remember one of the practices that was highlighted back in the days in the Vault 7 leaks, if I remember. There was like this page where they were saying like, what did the equation guys do wrong that we
My
should
favorite.
care about. And in particular, they were talking about the a very specific RC6 implementation from all these equation tools. And whenever I see this kind of bad food, dead food, like all these constants, they are like gold for any kind of threat hunter, because then you can pivot, like write signatures for the constants which shouldn't appear in normal programs, and then you find more and more and more. And typically this story never ends if you have good researchers, if you have good people to throw at this topic, and let's say they're not busy with RSA or other things, and they
Important
can
things.
work on this.
Cyber
and
disruption
they
unit.
don't waste their time with aliens.gov or only only farms.gov or things like
Only
that.
farms.
Only
It's
farms?
crazy.
Farms.gov. Yeah.
Did you
that's
see this?
I did,
What?
yeah.
Are you guys
Only
serious?
farms.gov, yeah.
Yeah, the White House launched an onlyfarms.gov to like manage their farming subsidies to farmers in the US. It's like, I don't know.
That's
Still
cool.
waiting for the aliens. I don't know.
Well, let
But
me ask
like,
the question
yeah.
is what kind of future discoveries are we expecting from you talk about these magic
Everything
constants
else.
you might talk everything else meaning what? Like you think like, do you think there's a big massive risk of Trenchant code being exposed in more
Yeah,
problematic
not just their
ways?
code, but all their customers' operations. So not only all their customers' operations, but all their customers as well. So pretty much anyone who was using this framework with their own tools, maybe they had different implants getting dropped in the end. Everything is at risk, and I think that a good threat researcher is like a dog with a bone. He will just not give up, like forever and ever, for years to come. Will
Dig and dig and dig, yeah.
dig for these constants and for any kind of unique features. I just mentioned these magic numbers because they attracted my attention, but like the plugin IDs, all those kind of things, people remember them, and then when you see them again, like because they're being reused, or you go back 10 years and you find where it started, like good researchers, they will never give up. They'll keep digging and digging and digging until they uncover more and more and more. So again, like it depends if you have the resources to throw good researchers at this story. I'm sure there's a lot more to find if you have the telemetry and data they have. But of course, if resources are scarce and leadership wants you to focus on something else, then probably this can also be the last we hear about it.
Juanito, let me put you on the spot. I've just given you a job as like the executive in charge at Trenchant in the unit where this thing happened. What do you think is happening in there around like cleanup, damage control?
They're reading the Vol 7 page, what the equation did wrong, and start from there.
What do you think the scramble in there looks like?
I really don't know. It's different if we talked about. So if you wanted to talk about like how do you handle a leak like this, it's from the perspective of being like an offensive actor. That's one thing. If you want to talk about what's probably happening at Trenchant right now, I think that's a very different thing. But that's because the situation is so different and suboptimal. Even in like, I don't know what it looks like to be a private supplier of cyber whatever to the government right now. In part because we're in the middle of an actual war, right? Like I'm sure that everybody over there is quite busy with Iran, and I don't know that there's as much room and priority for theoretical problems when there's very real actual requirements on the table.
Yeah, but there's somebody in charge of their 0 days and their exploit frameworks are going like, let's grab. There's been hours and hours and hours of meetings trying to figure out what the fucking cleanup looks like.
Yeah,
especially with dogs and bones coming.
So the reason I'm putting it this way is essentially there's what we think of as the important thing to do from an OPSEC perspective for continuity of a project, period. Then there's what a customer requires of you in this situation. And that's why I started with we're in an actual war and blah blah blah, because I think what the customer requirements might be in the situation are probably a bit different than they would be in under normal circumstances, right? Like if there was nothing else going on and this shit went down, I think Trenchant would be in for a pretty shitty time dealing with its customers and how do we handle the fallout and trying to figure out exposed equities is like a nightmare. It's a fucking nightmare job. And I'm sure we've done it to many people many times. But like even, we talked about this and I put it in a footnote in one of the papers, one of the VB papers, but like the cleanup after Equation Group got burned was actually quite fascinating because you would think that, if they're that spooked, they would burn everything. But there were things that didn't get cleaned up. There were things that got cleaned up fast. There were things that get left around. There were old infections that were left there. You have conversations about like, well, why would you leave an old infection? You go, well, that target is still important. And somebody knows about it. Do you want to put a new version of your new toolkit in something that other people are already monitoring? Right? Like there's a lot of complex discussions to be had around equities.
The Kaspersky blog calls out the fact that 2 of the 5 exploits were developed after Operation Triangulation was publicly exposed in 2023, which meant that Trenchant continued building new exploits on top of the original platform. So even though that had been exposed and maybe not burned, they continued working on it. So there's like...
Well, you have to think about from a really practical standpoint, what do we mean by being exposed, right? At the time, the platform that was developing these things was not exposed. That source code was not out there, and it was not being used freely, willy-nilly by some random offensive actor that doesn't even clean up their fucking phishing links, right? Like that at the time.
Are you surprised Kaspersky didn't find Coruna? Or do you think they found it before? Kostin?
I am very surprised, and there's 2 things here. One is we understand now how poor are all the detection mechanisms on iOS. Like you can continue to use the same kit and nobody will catch you because there's basically almost no way to collect good telemetry. I mean, of course, there's companies and products like iVerify that are kind of changing the way this telemetry collection works. But traditional security companies, they don't have any kind of solution that could theoretically catch that. I think now there is a potential to change that with iOS virtual machines. When you can deploy iOS virtual machines and you can plug things in it or do like hypervisor level inspection of these VMs, then you can deploy crawlers. You can build kind of honeypots. You can use them to open suspicious phishing links, emails, whatever. Then that has the potential to catch more stuff. But I am a bit surprised indeed that Kaspersky didn't find Coruna because I think the potential would have been there. Probably, maybe they just didn't deploy the right signatures or enough signatures, which is something that, in my opinion, was a bit weird. I think I saw it like back in the days. There were like some detection mechanisms, basic ones in the Windows, like whatever EDR antivirus product, but they were like kind of missing the same how to call it, like obsession and how do you call like a rabid dog? Like it was missing that part of fixation or rabid dog style hunting that was going on with other tools. I don't know why. Maybe because they thought they would never be able to catch it, and it's like pointless to deploy detection on Windows, Linux, whatever, since the attacks will happen on iOS only. And even remember there was like suspicions, and I thought that was also interesting in the original triangulation story. There were discussions of the macOS implant, and I thought, yeah, there's potential, and we think that even Apple was deploying at some point signatures in Gatekeeper for the macOS version of Triangulation. So even Apple was hunting for that, basically. But somehow it felt that there was the story dropped. It was obviously a huge story, but the desire, like the obsession, the dog with the bone style hunting was not there. I don't know why.
Interesting.
You
Or
have
they
a
found
different.
Coruna and just didn't document it. Maybe there's
You
a
have
private report.
different
There's a lot of things,
motivations. You have different motivations now. Like, I mean, look, we're skirting around this, trying to be cute, but like clearly the priorities at Great are completely different these days, and like they have, they've been a dog with a bone when it comes to like Ukrainian operations, right? They've been more than happy to document the absolute shit out of that, and then with something like this, where you're like weird Russia nexus and and cybercrime and like whatever, all of a sudden you're much less enthusiastic. All right, well, I'm not trying to get all conspiracy theorist here. I'm just saying, like, we've been seeing a certain pattern of behavior, and this kind of lands within that same pattern of behavior.
Well, why is it okay for us to treat friendlies different, but it isn't okay for Kaspersky to treat friendlies different? Let's
I'm not saying I'm not saying that they can't.
Because the Google Cyber Disruption Unit isn't going to disrupt the Trenchant operation, right?
I don't know. I mean, Google Project Zero disrupts Trenchant operations, so I wouldn't say that, right? Like, let's make sure we dial the criticisms in just right? Like, I know what you're trying to say, and you're right about many places.
I'm just saying
when it comes
Kaspersky's
to
at war.
Google. Well,
and they have their
Kaspersky's not at war.
friendlies,
Russia's at war.
Sorry, my bad. Fact check
my
me.
point, but dude, no. My point here
You
is
get the point I'm making.
I get the point you're making, and what I want to say is that there's nothing wrong with them being aligned if they want to say that. We spent years making the point that Kaspersky, primarily that the Great Team, was not tied into these conflicts, was not influenced by these sorts of denials and like, oh, well, these are our friends, like you can't say blah, blah, blah. We never had that. We burned as many Russian ops, way more Russian ops than we ever burned, Five Eyes ops, and like we were just fucking hitting them willy-nilly. Like, I remember getting off stage.
Now, though. That was a true international team, and that was our defense for it as well, is that we had international folks all over the world, and it would have to be a massive collusion for everyone to come together and not
I agree
do
with you.
It's not
I
that
agree
anymore.
with you that it's different now, but I don't see the Kaspersky, like, the discussion of Great, the sort of self-promotion of Great being one that is saying that out loud, right? They're not like, well, we're, patriotic Russians who are just very invested in this operation, right? And like, we're not going to and I'm not saying they have to come out and say it, but I also don't want them to inherit the reputation of this sort of like global standard that we established for Great that clearly is not necessarily the way they operate anymore.
You're doing exactly what the person on Twitter said. You're doing.
We're
Stop
gonna
fucking
keep doing
talking
that, right?
Great.
What else was the person saying? That
What
we read certain ex posts as well.
yes. They guarantee that we read every post on Casper Secrets, which is a good segue into the fact that it's no longer a global team. Casper Secrets is pushing. I don't know.
What have I missed? I feel like I'm out of the loop on some drama that's very like specifically targeted at us. Like, what the fuck?
I don't know. People are listening to the podcast, and that's all I care
Very
about.
good.
I mean, who told them to listen? Who told them to listen to this shit? Yeah.
Proofpoint found an FSB connection to Dark Sword. They were able to link FSB sending phishing emails that eventually led to Dark Sword. So this thing is out there. It's being used in multiple places. Can we talk a little bit about patch levels? How many folks do you think is currently exposed to this? Apple just shipped iOS 26.4. 8 new emojis, by the way. So if you're into emojis, go grab your updates.
Oh, shit. Oh, wow.
Can I ask a very simple question? What were these 8 emojis?
I actually remember maybe 3 or 4. One is a ballet dancer. One is like a hairy animal. One is a head like shaking and exploding. Dumb stuff. I don't know.
Important. Dumb stuff.
But we got a big, massive patch batch as well. 40 plus CVEs across iOS and iPadOS 26.4. Nothing marked as ODay, so there is no may have been exploited in extremely targeted manner language.
Which
in
means
any
it's
of the...
massively being exploited everywhere, right?
Well,
Yes.
there's a linkage to the emoji thing, because I believe it's been proven that emojis not force, but incentivize people to update iOS more than anything else. Everyone wants to get the new emojis because when people are sending them, they appear wacky on my phone. So let me go get the new update. So shout out to Apple. Shout out to Apple for shipping.
Emojis to push
for using
security.
Well, it's a fact. It's a fact.
Look
Can I
who's
fact check
willing
you
to
on that?
shill
Like,
now. Yeah, please.
show us the study where we prove that. Yeah.
No,
Look who's willing to shill now. You
I'm
get a
just
little
saying.
you get a little pushback from like your Apple buddies for like
I'm
for
just saying,
making
we
a
patch-
joke, and now you want to be cool with Apple. Like
Ryan,
No, it's
do
real.
you remember back in the days you were interviewing me about jailbreaks? Do you remember that? Like 20 years ago, like good old
Lord.
times. I forgot what there was like the name of, you were doing like this this
Secure
show.
Matters thing.
Secure
Yeah.
Matters, exactly.
Yes.
And you were interviewing me on jailbreaks, and you were saying you don't need any jailbreaks, you update as soon as possible. I was a guy who was like, nah, I keep my phone, on old iOS versions so I can jailbreak them and inspect them. I changed my mind. You were right, man. Like 20 years later, I think you are right. You need to update as soon as possible to the latest version. You need to update to that and enable lockdown. Like these are dark times, if you want, like dark sword times. These are dark times.
dark times.
And you need to update as soon as possible. If you're on old iOS versions and you have the option to update, by the way, because some phones don't have the option to update. I have, I think, an iPhone 11 that doesn't get the 26 option for an update. So if you can update. That's my advice.
What's the name of this company? Caliph. Have you guys heard of this new pen test red teaming company out of California called Caliph, CALIF.io? Bruce Dang actually just went over there. Bruce Dang, our old friend from Veramind / Microsoft. I think he was briefly at Apple as well. He just joined Caliph, and they published a blog post on Apple silent fixing a bunch of stuff. They documented this background security improvements update, which is a thing that was shipped silently in March. That patched in security issues that Apple is not documenting. So they disclose one CVE, but they're not documenting some others. So we catch Apple on some silent fixing things here, which is why CVE counts are largely useless. But I want to call out a note. Another point someone made to me is like, whenever you see one of these Apple bulletins, like scroll all the way to the bottom and you'll see additional recognition, and below there'll be like a 15 or 20 names with some things that people help fix with. A lot of the silents are right in there, and those get CVEs much later on in a kind of a convoluted way where we never get to track. Or so people using CVEs and tracking, and you're largely wasting your time, because there's a lot of CVEs that gets bottled up on the there. Anything else to call attention to on the iOS, Austin?
I think there's an interesting angle here, and they talk about these cryptex volumes, which is like, first of all, it's fantastic that people are looking into that. I haven't seen a lot of public discussions of how this actually gets implemented and how Apple does that in between the big updates. And I for one, I have seen very interesting things, like different people, maybe sometimes with the same phones, they get a kind of different of these cryptexes. Like they get different packages, although they should be getting the same. Even with the latest iOS versions, it's very weird that for me it says it's 14 gigabytes download. For another guy with the same phone says it's 5 gigabytes download. Like I don't fully understand the reason like for these differences, but one thing I think would be a lot of beneficial. It would be super beneficial if we'd have more people looking into deployment of these cryptex volumes, and the differences between like the same phone, why some people get more, why some people get less. I think that's also an interesting question here.
The Apple Patch also includes some interesting things that raise my eyebrows. There's a bunch of baseband telephony remote attack surface things that were patched, some baseband bugs. So whenever those pop up, it'll get my eyebrows raised. And then there's another interesting one with a stolen device protection bypass. An attacker with physical access bypass biometric gated protected apps using just the passcode. And I want to just kind of dovetail that with news we got out of Hong Kong. The US consulate in Hong Kong actually issued a warning that on March 23rd, 2026, the Hong Kong government changed the implementation rules relating to the national security law. It is now a criminal offense to refuse to give the Hong Kong police the passwords or decryption assistance to access all personal electronic devices, including cell phones and laptops. The legal change applies to everyone, including U.S. citizens in Hong Kong arriving or even just transiting. In addition, the Hong Kong government also has more authority to take and keep any personal devices. So if you're doing business and you're traveling through Hong Kong and so on, keep this in mind. This is a pretty significant change to the law there. Costin, how would you recommend people traveling through those areas? What is the threat modeling that is required?
It's important to say which areas, and by the way, Hong Kong is maybe just aligning them with kind of the standard nowadays. I think the UK has the same rule, and if you refuse to give your password, you can get prosecuted under the Terrorism Act. So that's like really, really bad if you refuse to give your device passwords in the UK. Obviously, Hong Kong, which falls under China, so yeah, I mean, I personally, I think that everyone that I know that was traveling to high-risk areas, everyone was going with the burner. Everyone was like just throwing them away afterwards. The funny thing is, I remember back in the days, even there were like people who were coming to SAS, and they were like bringing burners and just throwing them away afterwards, which was funny to me. It wasn't necessarily because the location, but it was more like the idea of going to a certain conference that can be a hotbed for malicious activity from all directions, coming from all sides of the world. And to be honest, yeah, it makes a lot of sense to go with burner devices. The only question is, of course, what kind of burner device, what kind of data you want to have on them, and would they include credentials to your accounts? Because like in that case, all they need is just to grab your passwords or access tokens to your account, and then they like just download everything from your accounts, and it's no longer just one device, it's all your cloud data that gets exposed.
Speaking of passwords and cloud data, we got news yesterday that this Handala group that was responsible for the Striker thing back in a couple of weeks ago, they broke into the FBI Director Kash Patel's personal mailbox. It appeared to me, based on what I saw, that this was a password exposure issue. It looks legitimate. What do we know? Juanito, what can you say about this? And what is the possible implications? Because even if a personal mailbox is compromised and you get some old photographs and so on, what are the possible implications of the FBI director having his credentials not only leaked, but actually used?
That depends entirely on how the what's in that mailbox and how it's being used, and obviously if it's being used as OAuth for anything else, right?
Or if everything published is what we know is in the mailbox, right?
Well,
and you could choose not to release everything.
You're answering your own question, right?
Like
you never know. No, it's fine. Like you never know, what people use their personal mailboxes for, right? That kind of shit happens. You have some annoying bullshit, what seems like a bullshit limitation at work, and you decide
rash on this side of your face.
No, I'm saying like the stuff at work is annoying, and you need to do this thing, and you need to send this thing, and you end up sending yourself like some private document through your personal mailbox, and like people do that kind of triangulating all the time. So it really depends on what's in there. Also, like any compromat that's in any compromat worthy blackmail-worthy material that might be in that personal mailbox is obviously a blight and a problem that they have to deal with, kind of going forward. It really depends. I mean, I think at different times, this country has been more or less stringent with their concern for what, public figures do with personal mailboxes. That's a standard that seems to kind of come back and forth, depending on who you ask and when you ask. You can also get really interesting situations, like if you remember, oh my God, General Petraeus's whole situation with, that was a fun and unexpected.
That was a fun one because he was putting documents into drafts and just leaving it in draft. It just never got sent, and then someone was just logging into the same account and go looking at the drafts.
It just all depends on how you how you use your email, right? But I think on a more practical sense, I mean, it sure as shit puts Handala at the very top of, like, if this country cares about anything cyber right now, I think Handala seems to be a pretty top tier target now in some capacity. So,
and we got news that the DOJ is actually linking Handala to Moist. I mean, which we had known before, but they seized 4 Moist link domains, Handala.hack, the same things you were talking about earlier. And we got news as well from Striker by Palo Alto that malware was actually used. We still have not seen any IOCs or any sort of hunting telemetry available for any of this stuff. Juanito poo-pooed it the first time that this was like, these people are largely useless and this is what they're going after thing. Well, Costin, do you think this Kash Patel thing is something, or do you think it's nothing?
Was I wrong? Like, am I wrong? What the fuck?
I think it's like some of the titles are misleading in the sense they say they hacked FBI directors' personal mailbox. I wouldn't call this necessarily hacking, if you ask me. I would say maybe they gained access.
They logged in.
They gained access. I think that's the correct term. And there's, by the way, there's a great analysis, potential analysis from our friend Omri Segev Moyal, who explains how this was done from mixing together a bunch of public leaks that they may have collected over the years. That includes like the MGM.
So walk us through the kind of the chaining that could have gotten you there.
The first step is that in reality his name is not Kash Patel. So if you search for Kash Patel throughout all these leaks, and by the way, security companies all over the world collect these kind of leaks. They store them in search clusters in order to be able to protect their customers, to warn their customers whenever, let's say, leak credentials appear for them. And the first thing is that, Kash Patel is not actually his name. If you check his real name on Wikipedia, it's, Kashyap Pramod Patel. So if you search for that, then you start finding hints. If I start finding accounts, all sorts of accounts that were leaked over the years from one source and another. So without giving going through all the places where they find his accounts, one thing leads to another and eventually leads to a Gmail account. And from the Gmail account, in other leaks, you can find what could potentially be the password to access that account. And without two-factor authentication, you're essentially in the mailbox. And the thing here is that trading leaked credentials is essentially a huge business nowadays, and it was powering a lot of intrusions from ransomware groups. I've seen many cases, for instance, one of even the hacking of, let's say, of Orange Romania. I think it was through one of these leaked credentials when the hackers edited the BGP routes. Another case was the Chamber of Deputies in Romania. I think it also started with leaked credentials. And by leaked, what do I mean by leaked credentials? Is essentially username and passwords that get traded on underground forums. Identity, like emails.
I think you mean identity-based attacks, bro. Identity-based attacks.
You know good
I don't
RSA,
use any
bro.
of that buzzwords,
You need to get out of RSA, bro.
Like the lead kids, they call them ULPs or ULPs.
ULPs.
ULPs, yeah, ULPs. which is like URL, login, password. So all these ULP packages, which get traded on underground forums, like breach forums, like LeakBase until recently. Some of them available like for money, for Bitcoin, for Monero, for whatever. Some of them being available for free, and putting together like databases from these linked archives. They can be very, very fruitful for cyber criminals. And as we see here, probably this is how Handala got access
forget
to
cyber criminals.
to the mailbox.
Isn't it? Am I crazy to imagine that there's a ton of other people who'd been sifting through that mailbox for a long time? I mean, this is what intelligence agencies are paid for, right? I mean, like, what are we doing?
Look, like this probably should be a wake-up call in the sense that someone, CISA, I don't know who, like remember last time I was calling out CISA, right? Somebody, someone, some agency should be just reversing all these steps, not just for Kash Patel, but for pretty much all high-ranking politicians, like all of them. Do the same. Just try to repeat these steps. Get access to like a good collection of databases.
This is my point. Everyone has already done this.
Try to repeat.
Wait.
I'll tell
But
you a
both
secret.
of you are speaking past
You
each
search
other.
search for me, like search for you, search for JAGS, search for any of us, and you will probably find something.
Yeah,
Half of them will
yeah.
be fake credentials, and the other half will be old credentials, like from 20 years ago, from something like that, when we had an account somewhere and that hosting provider got owned and all the passwords got leaked. So anywhere, like almost any person that has some kind of an internet presence will appear in some of these leaks, sometimes with passwords, sometimes with accounts. But like the reality is that it's almost everyone. And of course, I think some agency, some entity should be proactively doing the same procedure for all high-ranking officials.
So here's a problem that I will point out, and it's that, you know, that sounds like a counterintelligence matter, and the organization that does counterintelligence in this
is what
country
blows my mind.
is
Trenchant.
the FBI. So, you know, I agree that somebody should be doing this sort of work. I get the sense that
The irony.
How do you not have multi-factor authentication on a Google mailbox? I mean,
Before we go further, is there any chance that the FBI might be sponsoring this podcast in the future?
no chance. You can
No
go
chance.
hard.
It's almost, yeah, almost.
No, you go hard. I am neutral.
Costin, you mentioned LeakBase a bunch of times. We got news this week that there was a Russian arrest of this forum admin Chucky in southern Russia. His name has not been publicly released. You mentioned like this. Why is this LeakBase interesting? Is LeakBase interesting at all? And what is the significance of Russia running in there? And
LeakBase was probably, in my opinion, was the biggest, most powerful, active underground forum trading in kind of leak credentials, like those hack databases, SQL dumps, website dumps, pretty much kind of anything. And it had this system of VIPs where you could purchase a VIP account. I think the price in 2023 was around 4 Monero if you spoke Russian. So if you spoke Russian and you were like a good
The
at
price was
negotiation.
different depending on whether you spoke Russian.
Of
How
course.
fucked up is this?
Of course.
Wow.
That's why
Wow.
pretty much all the researcher friends that I know had like a native Russian speaker who knows all the jargon on all the terms like fleshka and I don't know, zakladka, zaraza, whatever, had their Russian friends buy the VIP access. And like some of them that I know personally, they bought it for as little as 1 Monero, which back in the days was like $100.
Fucking bargain, bro.
I think the price went up, and it wasn't necessarily mandatory that you buy the VIP access. If you got the VIP access to LeakBase, that essentially granted you access to everything on the forum for free from that moment on, because you are like the VIP. Otherwise, you had to buy credits, and you can use the credits to purchase like individual leaks, individual dumps, and so on. Some of the best dumps were being shared by Chucky himself, who was the admin on Telegram. I think he was running several Telegram private groups for his VIP customers, and this is where he was sharing like the best of his goodies. Sometimes we're joking, like this forum had like over 140,000 members, and I was joking like with friends that half of those were security researchers like us, easily. If you wonder, like this is the let me be the devil's advocate, a very controversial take is what happened here. The FSB took him into custody. They got access to everything he had, which were like terabytes. I think his private collection was, some people were saying like hundreds of terabytes in size of leaked credential databases. All that is now in the hands of the FSB, who, like you were just saying, that they're using what dark sword to target people.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Now they can also
dark
use all
sword
this
when you could just go arrest a guy and take out? Yeah.
And like the controversial take here, it was like, man, things were better when like half of those 142,000 members were security researchers, harvesting all the information, notifying their customers. Everyone was happy. Everyone was being protected and warned in advance whenever their information was leaked. Now it will be interesting to see what the FSB can do with all these databases they got access to. And I wonder if Chucky will actually go to the jail or go through one of these
Go to an office building
rehabilitation programs for hackers, in which he becomes a decorated member of Sophisy or
Bro, you know
Turla
exactly what's
or
happening.
Callisto.
Tell me
or
what you
whatever.
think is happening, Juan.
I think, that's exactly what's happening already, because they never, I was like, oh, wow, the Russians arrested him. Why would they arrest him? It's like,
Very unusual.
because there was already like a fucking, international raid, and like you've basically gotten tagged as a criminal that has no other options anymore, because the rest of the world has turned against you, and all of a sudden the Russians show up at your door. They definitely never knew you were doing this before. They definitely had no influence or like connection to this illicit but very large scale, very notorious business. And all of a sudden, what you're doing is something that's worth scrutiny, and you're going to jail, and maybe you're going to jail, and then you don't go to jail, right? Like it's...
Consumers have no, like the mom and pops, regular people who have their credentials in there, all this credit card data, banking details. There's nothing you and I can do, right? You just kind of live and hope.
You don't have to live and hope. You have to, like, the best thing you can do is just use a unique passwords on each website. Make sure they're like different one from another. Enable 2FA with whatever account
Password
you're
manager.
using. Use password manager for sure. By the way, there's a huge difference. So like in this, how these leaked credentials get collected in the first place. So they can come from different sources, and they make a lot of difference. So on one hand, they can come from these, let's say, services where you used to have an account. So let's say you like cricket, Ryan, right? Then you sign up on I don't know, Friendly Cricket Friends show or .com, and you put like a password, you put your email, and then these Friendly Crickets show people, they get hacked, and essentially it turns out that they weren't using any kind of hashing on the password. They were just storing your password in plain text together with your name, email address, phone number, whatever, and that gets leaked, right? So that's one source. The other source is, let's say, you are using an infected computer, or you get infected yourself, then a stealer collects like a package of data from your machine, and generally those are like a lot more valuable to criminals whenever they can get their hands on something like that, for obvious reasons, because it may have even your entire password manager, like all of it with all your passwords for all your websites, maybe your magic money wallet like Bitcoin, whatever you use nowadays, right? And all your investments, I don't know, password to your investment accounts and so on. So that's, of course, a lot more valuable. And through phishing. Phishing is another solution, like where people just collect many credentials through like phishing attacks. And I think, it was a bit weird when they were announcing this takedown of LeakBase. It was on March 13, by the way. A message appeared in Chucky's private Telegram channel in Russian, by the way. It said, like a big logo with MVD Russia, like the police, and then it said MVD Russia, and it says Telegram channel LeakBase Gold pack was closed, something like that. And the people were saying like, this is exit scam by Chucky. He's exit scamming like just to hide, and nobody thought it was legitimate. But wow, it seems that it was the real thing. And it was indeed from the MVD, from the Russian police, who shut down his channel, got access to all his tools, computers, whatever. And it'll be interesting to see how this pivots in the future.
It just shows that Russia also has cyber disruption units. Not a big floating around this weekend, and it's amazing that we got an hour and 45 minutes in, and we're now getting to this software supply chain info stealer, which is kind of fits into this pattern of stealing credentials for these RSA boots. TeamPCP, which is a threat actor, I don't know who the threat actor is, but they claim responsibility for this LiteLLM PyPy compromise that hit a bunch of like AI dependencies. And it was tied earlier to a Trivy supply chain hack, where attackers compromised Aqua Security's Trivy GitHub action, injected malware into CI pipelines, then spread the Checkmarx in kind of a cascading fashion. Kostin, did you get a chance to look at these InfoStealer leak hacks? And what do we know about this TeamPCP?
Right, I did have a chance to look a bit, and I thought it was like funny that Andrei Karpathy wrote about it. I think he got owned. Yeah, I mean, if you're into this AI
Who is
field,
this guy?
Who is this guy?
Karpathy? Jesus, bro.
Who is he? Jesus. Yeah, he's the
for
Jesus
the
of
audience,
AI.
like who?
Who is he? For our audience, he's Jesus. He's Jesus of the AI bunch. If you like, I don't know if I. Please go ahead, give us
Andrei
a better
Karpathy
description.
Used to head AI at Tesla. So like all your self-driving magic came from Andrei Karpathy and his team. He was also early OpenAI. And he has been like the primary evangelist for AI coding stuff very early on in a really meaningful way. Like you could watch his videos and he would explain like, this is how you create like GPT, this is how transformers work. This is how you would program this, that, and the other. He coined the term vibe coding. Like he's just been that kind of like the popular, accessible, representative of AI, the AI revolution to people. And so folks, anything that Karpathy does is, pretty popular and pretty well respected, right?
Thanks for the explanation. Not everyone knows all these AI people.
No, but I suspect he got owned because he wrote like a long post on X complaining about the security, the supply chain, the risk, like things that we have been saying for many, many years. And I like it made me realize, by the way, personally, I admit to my shame, I was not familiar with this LiteLLM. So maybe like a question to chat. Do any of you use LiteLLM at all, like in your setups, or is it some obscure thingy? Apparently, it's super popular.
It's pretty popular as like a gateway, essentially. So like a lot of projects use LiteLLM. A lot of them.
To my shame, I do not use. Well, to my luck, I don't use this thingy. Like I just coded like my own gateway wrapper, if you want. And I think Karpathy was owned in this supply chain attack, which again, like TeamPCP is an interesting player here. Because on their X account they held to come from Israel, and they've like shown signs. They've actually developed some of their tools and attacks to wipe Iranian computers. So if they can determine the computer is Iranian, they would essentially take offensive actions against that machine. So it's unusual to see threat actors like this hail out of Israel. I mean, historically, yeah, we've seen teams, but not like cyber criminal style operations out of
is
Israel.
it a cyber criminal style operation?
It is, because like the best example here is they teamed up with the ransomware group, because they allegedly they stole so many credentials out of this Trivy or Trivy supply chain attack. They stole so many credentials that they actually decided to partner with the ransomware group to make money out of it.
To do identity-based attacks, attacks.
And it makes sense in like, if you are not a ransomware group and you get your hands on that, you have two options. One, you sell it to someone, but probably it will not be very beneficial. You won't make a lot of money. Or you can do exactly this: partner with a professional ransomware group and let them, leverage your database of credentials to do a lot more harm and make a lot more money with a lot less risk for you directly. I mean, in the end, it will be those guys who push the buttons and encrypt data and target customers and whatever. And you will be just, the one providing the credentials. So from this point of view, yeah, for sure, I think it's a cyber criminal group. You can define it like that.
Is there a gap in the pipeline that allows this to happen, where the developers have no how do you defend against something like this?
No, but I was thinking exactly that. How to
what's the controls?
It?
What's the controls to defend against something like this?
But everyone is aboard this vibe coding train, whatever. They're just like racing towards the cliff, and everyone, all the people who are everyone who's developing, of course, with the exception of people with security backgrounds.
You think?
I would think, yeah.
You hope.
But all these people that the newcomers in this sphere have zero security whatsoever.
People are connecting
they
everything
discover
to everything.
Supply chain attacks. Whoa, supply chain attacks are the new big thing. Really? Well, yes. Or, oh my God, all my credentials got stolen and they own my GitHub, and then they pushed a malicious code change to my 10 million users. Well, yes, of course they did. Of course. That is just the feeling that there's a lot of enthusiasm and flamboyance, and people are developing things left and right and rushing vibe coding stuff with zero care whatsoever about their security, the implications of them getting owned for their users. I mean, best example is Karpati, and he by the way, he published some really cool projects recently, like an LLM implementation in C that I thought was very cool, in 2,000 lines of code. So he's been sharing very cool stuff. Hopefully, I mean, they didn't take advantage of his GitHub or whatever. But I think there's probably a lot of people doing AI and vibe coding with very little care about security. And we have seen this before, especially
what
with...
does care look like? I mean, how do you defend against something like this?
Yes, and this is what I was getting to. All the developers who get owned by the North Korean threat actors, because, they load the project, and it just turns out that if you simply load the project, that can infect you, right? And a thing like that. And they may be very good developers, but they know very little about supply chain attacks and about this. And I think that the issue at core lies with the fact that a lot of high-end developers or very smart people somehow feel that they are immune from these attacks simply because they're very good at coding. So it gives you a kind of impression that you are immune to viruses, malware, whatever, because you're smart and you're very good at coding. So there's no chance that you can be hit. As a result, you don't run any antivirus products, you don't run any DR, you don't run not even Wazoo or whatever. You don't tap your internet traffic.
You don't turn on lockdown mode.
Right. You don't turn the lockdown mode. You don't do anything because you are a very good high-end developer. And this creates this kind of...
we talk about Linux admins, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think the one is very like the two are very well connected to each other. It gives you this impression of invulnerability because you're very good and skilled at what you do, but I think the rude awakening is that being good at coding or being good with AI, it does not equal that you are good with security and you can mitigate supply chain attacks or like not get infected by LiteLLM PyP compromise.
And what did you do?
What do you do? I just said run things like what is it? Little snitch, EDRs, antivirus products. You need to run this on your machine or you will get compromised by one thing or another.
And one of those things would have been able to detect that this was a malicious thing being pushed. I mean, this is what I'm trying to think on a real level.
Potentially. It depends on which part. Potentially the exfiltration step might have been detected, potentially. I think that the whole idea, this whole ecosystem is like flawed at some point, and like all these dependencies and how easy it is, just to link your tools and projects with these GitHub repositories, and you just you do like a Git
so complex
update.
And impossible to understand.
Yeah, but like a simple command and let's just update with the latest version from the repository. It's game over. And the other thing which I personally hate a lot is when people say here's this Rust project, and no, they're like
it's written in Rust. It's safe.
No, that's fine. I love Rust. It's fantastic. There's only one issue. You get this Rust whatever project, and it just doesn't compile with the version of Rust that you have on Ubuntu. So everybody says you need to install Rust from their website. You need to go to their website, and on their website, I think that's just madness. It's just a one-liner that you need to run in order to install that thingy, and it's just I don't know, curl pipe sh kind of thingies, which I just hate. I think in 2024 we're still doing this curl pipe bash kind of things. It's just stupid. It's madness. Seriously, there's so many points where this can go wrong, with many in the middle attacks, with compromises of the repository, and you have absolutely zero clue.
Tell them, Kosin. Tell them.
If they got hit or infected with something. At least when I download, let's say I download the package, I download the package. I can check it on VirusTotal. I can check a signature. I can check the SHA-256 and see if it's the same. I don't know. It will, the process. There are more steps in the process where you can see something is wrong. But when you go to even the simplest of things is you need the latest version of Rustup to compile this thingy. You go to their website. What is it? Rust.re. And you just copy this one-liner pipe bash, and you just run it on your machine. It's fine. Just run it.
It's fine, bro.
It's like the whole click fix. It's like the whole click fix phenomenon where you're online searching for a fix for your computer, and they give you a script, copy paste into terminal, and then you're pop. By the way, I see Apple starting to block some of that now. You can't run things with malicious things, so there's some cat and mouse being happening there.
Now you're cool with Apple. You hurt their feelings one time, and Ivan gets mad at you, and all of a sudden we're shilling for Google, but you're cool with Apple.
Shout out to Apple addressing ClickFix, which is
wow. Yeah, sure.
Wait a second.
Let's not forget what was my recommendation. If I were Apple, start the cyber mitigation unit now. You need to start it now.
I mean, from the sounds of it, they're rolling it back more than starting it, right? I don't know what the fuck is happening inside of Seer, but
doesn't look making good to some investors. Remember, when you're you're looking well, you develop, you create more units. When things are bad, you cut.
Yeah, I mean, you take your competent leadership and you cut them out. That sounds like a fucking brilliant way to approach this.
in your zeal to pick on our friends at Apple, you're getting me sidetracked. Juanito,
Wow.
what do you know about TeamPCP? Is there any relevant significance to the fact that these guys are the ones taking credit? What do we know?
No, Kostin knows. I don't know what the fuck's going on. I was actually, for a second, I was like kind of curious because they seem to have developed some...
People?
Well, they seem to have developed like a weirdly interesting mechanism for how the payloads get loaded. So when I saw the whole Iran thing, like, you know, it wiping Iranian machines from Dan Gooden's article, I thought that was curious. And before Kostin said these guys claim that they come from Israel, my thinking was like, well, did someone essentially hijack this complex, like, contract-based mechanism for the payloads, and we can just kind of, whoever wants, they can just like upload a payload to be used through this? I guess not. I'm guessing that's not what's going on. But no, they weren't on my radar until this popped off. So Kostin's a better authority.
These supply chain things will pop up week to week. I mean, it's just like a whole hodgepodge of like weaknesses waiting to be exploited.
It's like, I think, you want to install something simple. I don't know, what is it, like OpenClaw or something like that. Then you discover that this actually has 15,000 dependencies, and if one of those like this gets owned, it's nirvana.
Dude, I've been talking about this like all week with being in SF and the RSA folk around, but it feels like our jobs are essentially we've been told to make a ship out of Swiss cheese and then to ride that ship on a transatlantic voyage, and the crew and the guests are all mice. They're hungry mice. So you're trying to plug all the holes in this fucking thing all day long, hoping it won't sink. The people on the inside are eating the hull of the ship from the inside out. And at the end of the day, there's no way it doesn't sink because it's a ship made of Swiss cheese. And like that's really the best that I can sort of put forth on this whole security racket right now, in the sense of like, look at Brew and NPM and apt and every one of these pip or PyPy, like crates and whatever the fuck you want to call it. All of these mechanisms, they are just largely unsupervised, unscrutinized vulnerability distribution mechanisms. All you're doing is shoving code from some random person to another machine, and because you're a dev, it means that usually you have the most privileges and the least safety mechanisms on your machine. And that machine is designed to just take random fucking code and execute it and update it every single day, and that's the thing that produces downstream products for everybody else. There is no way to win in this security mechanism. There is no way to fix this ecosystem for as long as this is the setup. The whole thing is fucked. The foundation is rotten, because that is just an indefensible surface. But
this is how we're building the future. We're in the earliest days of AI, and this is what it looks like. Could you imagine what it looks like 5 years from now when shit has been built on top of shit, to is connected to some other shit, and it's like...
The point is, what do you build? Do you take this resurgence and this sudden, unexpected capability to create an entirely new substrate? Or do you just keep using this shit to create more shit to pretend that this is like a manageable system? In which case, I agree with you, Ryan, like we are beyond fucked, and all we're going to do is scale up being fucked. But like, for once, I think the physics of this allow for us to create a whole new substrate. I just don't know that the Frontier Labs have that vision just yet. They're still, even though we see them as visionary and so kind of big picture and future thinking, I don't think they're thinking big picture enough for us.
Well, they're shipping products that they're shipping. I saw Anthropic ship Claude computer takeover, where you're giving Claude access to your mouse and your keyboard to go click on things and do all these things, and we're kind of like standardizing on the normalcy of that stuff. We're so excited about AI doing all this magical agentic stuff that we're like fascinated by it, and we're just giving connections here, there, and everywhere. And I'm looking around like, oh my god, this doesn't feel right, or it doesn't feel normal at all. But we've normalized it, so.
The good news is we're gonna have our jobs secure for a very long time.
Fair enough.
I mean, if people build the foundation out of
Cardboard, right?
Matches, yeah, everything will go down in fire.
Last story on our list, and I want to get to it before we close, is the FCC announcing, this is the other TP-Link shoe dropping here now, the FCC banning the importation of new computer routers made overseas, citing security risks. The FCC order specifically calls out these Volts Typhoon, Flux Typhoon, Salt Typhoon as examples of these quote-unquote foreign-made routers being exploited in attacks against U.S. critical infrastructure. Existing router models already authorized by the FCC can still be sold, but moving forward, so you don't have to rip and replace anything, but moving forward, any new device models moving forward. My question here is, what does foreign made mean? Because if I'm Cisco and I'm manufacturing it in Vietnam, is that a foreign-made device? And and in a serious way, do we have any clarity on that part of it? And is this the TP-Link shoe dropping, which means we're kicking all non-American routers out of the country? What do you make of this, Juanito? You're laughing.
I mean, I have no fucking clue, and I've talked about this before. Like, look, I'm happy to see things move. You don't have to give me a perfect solution at all times, and otherwise that means that it's not worth it. I'm not saying that. I have talked about this before when we started the TP-Link thing, precisely because I think that this is one I'd like to see being handled with a little bit more kind of like care, in the sense of, everyone's routers are shit. And that causes massive structural problems for the internet, right? It causes massive vulnerability, right? The Soho routers are garbage, and they're if we sit around talking shit about Ivanti, Fortinet, and Cisco and all these like appliances, that's the enterprise grade version of which is shit
in itself, right?
It's shit, but it's shit and very expensive shit, so you kind of expect something better, but it's shit. And but most people in their houses, they've got like what's essentially like a $4 router, a $4 Chinese router with somebody else's like name slapped on it. And it's not just shit, but also it's basically end of life the minute that you get it, because it's just it's basically dumping, right? Like nobody's actually, you're not spending money on this thing meaningfully, even though, I mean, you're going to keep it probably until the day it dies. Or some other like telco, ISP or whatever just gives you a different one. And so you don't have a lot of opportunities to change it. It basically manages everything in your house. And most of it is shit. So for me, it's not that I don't want to see them mess with that. I do want to see them mess with that.
Something needs fixing, right?
Yeah.
At some point, something in this system needs fixing.
So let's say this, right? I'm excited to see this come through the FCC. I think the FCC is the right vehicle for doing things like this, where they come and say, hey, you need to maintain a certain standard. You can't just come flood this, this country with garbage devices. You need to have, it's a vehicle for regulation that I think Americans have accepted is well scoped enough that we're cool with it to some degree. Right? Like people don't look at the FCC, you look at the FCC and you hope for good things. It doesn't always happen, but you do. So I'm all for it. I think the simplest problem here, my simplest issue here is, what do we buy? And like that's it, right? Like I don't have a problem with us saying all this shit is shit. Sure, I agree. No question. What isn't, right? Like, what are we saying? Because it's basically, the way that it's being told to me is the majority of this stuff is being built in China, Vietnam, or Taiwan. So to say don't buy foreign is a bit of a reach, right? Like, I think what you mean to say is don't buy Chinese. Okay, that leaves, Taiwanese and Vietnamese stuff. And even then, it's like, we know that alone, it doesn't do anything, but then you're also just sort of left in this confusing state of going, it's my router from Taiwan or from Vietnam? Is this a good one? Like, not that necessarily makes a big fucking difference. What we're talking about is like security standards and like how well the OS is maintained, and does it have an update mechanism, and does it have proper signing keys, and does it have a hard-coded password that you didn't even know about? Is it possible to change some of those settings? Like, is there what is end of life for these companies, right? Like, do you mean end of life as in like in 6 months I have no more support? Or like, is there no support at all ever? Or, like, essentially what we want to talk about is essentially what we hope to see out of folks like the NCSC in the UK, where they'll like take this topic more meaningfully. Instead, we're saying we're doing it in a kind of like xenophobic way, where we're just like, oh, it's just we don't want you to use foreign stuff. And you go, well, is there any domestic stuff? And you go, not really. You go, okay, so we don't use routers anymore.
And all the domestic stuff is made in China. And they're specifically calling it foreign-made consumer routers. So I don't even know what this order really means. Does it mean that I think it's just TP-Link will no longer be allowed to sell here? I don't know. I can't make sense of it.
This is a real problem that needs a real solution. This is not a real solution. This is the beginnings of something. Right? Like, because one way to read this, if we want to make sense of it, is to say, well, are we bringing
manufacturing back to the US?
Right. Are we signaling back to these companies to say, hey, we're willing to ban all these other things if you're willing to start building, Ubiquiti dream machines in Texas?
Right.
And, okay.
That's one way to read into it, right?
Yeah, and it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad concept, but it's kind of like horse before the cart. I will also say that this isn't like something it's not an iPhone. It's not something you replace every year. And this is what I've been saying since the TP-Link thing started, where it's like, you really only get one bullet, if at all, right? Like, you might convince people to change routers once, if you like really try. So like, use the opportunity.
You need to start degrading the battery.
Well, let me put it to you differently.
That's how you get people to get new iPhones, right? You degrade the battery.
I'm sorry, bro. If I was starting a router manufacturing company in the US, and you go, it's a tough enough gig. It's a tough enough job, because you're saying, we need to design this thing. We need to get people that can build it. We need to be able to build enough throughput of these devices locally. Where are we getting the parts? Do we have the talent to do it? Do we have a software stack that's defensible? Do we have enough marketing? Do we have enough capital? And assuming that you can do all of those things, then you're in a pretty interesting position, because, and you have to do all of that within a reasonable enough price, because the whole market is degraded to a point where people, think of it as like a $15 piece of garbage. So, right, like, if you show up with a $200 local solution,
in some cases you're not even buying it. You're getting it from your Cox or your local ISP sending this shit router into your house.
I agree, and that's part of the problem. And frankly, and I said this when the TP-Link thing happened, I think that that's something the FCC could target more meaningfully, right? Like, the FCC, instead of just saying, hey, don't buy Chinese shit, could recognize, hey, I'm just going to make something up here, but my assumption is 80% of American households get their routers from one of the big three telcos. And you go, okay, big three telcos, you can't peddle. Right, you can't peddle a bunch of Chinese garbage to all these different places. And then those people go, well, shit, what do we do? Right, like, who do we? And then you have an incentive to fund the thing. And then you have, right, like, it's different to be told to start a router company in America with all the costs and no expectation that anyone's going to buy your thing because you're just making an expensive version of something that everybody has for cheap already. But if you're telling me, hey, come build a router manufacturer in Texas, and if you can get shit made in the next 6 months or next year,
these carriers will
AT&T
be
and
shipping,
T-Mobile
right?
and Xfinity and Verizon, they have hundreds of millions of orders waiting for you.
But that's the only answer, though, right?
I
mean,
agree.
That is the only answer. Otherwise, we're in this thing where we're doing these kind of like piecemeal. We're gonna ban things made here, ban things made there. They get another name, it gets shifted into some other. We're just going through this cycle. At a time when it's proven that these home office routers out of support are part of these orb networks that are tied to typhoons, and now you're just like, nobody's doing anything, and the only thing to be done is this massive holistic thing that will take a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of energy, and I don't think we get anywhere there. We're trying drones. I mean, this is not the first time the FCC previously added foreign-made drones and drone components to this so-called covered list. So we'll see how it goes. Costin, anything to add to this from a European perspective? Do you guys worry at all about what your local router looks like?
Well, first of all, I want to salute the fact that you mentioned drones, orbs, like this is what I care about nowadays, and aliens.gov. So
Alien.gov. Stop it.
And like all these meteors that are like coming down. No, I mean, in Europe, we are happy if we have routers. Like any router we have, we're happy. I mean, people are happy. You know, you have a router, that's good. Typically, you get it from your ISP. Very few people actually buy it themselves.
And it's typically a cheap Chinese knockoff as well?
Yeah, like usually like these OEM versions. So like they're like branded by the operator, but inside they're like typically a very, very cheap solution that doesn't get updates the usual. I mean, it's super typical around here. I would say the only thing which is kind of driving the change is this kind of die fast. Like I've seen these routers die in 4 years, so you need a new one, and your ISP will replace it for free. And the other thing is people, you know, there's a lot of gigabit fiber around here. So the other thing which is driving the change is people upgrading their internet link and getting better, newer hardware that in some cases, you know, it's good enough, I would say. But of course, vulnerable devices are an issue everywhere. The only thing which I've seen perhaps maybe done a bit better around here, of course, that in the States we have Lumen and the likes, Cyberlink, CenturyLink, and I know ISPs, for instance, in Romania, they're super active in blocking malicious device. So if your device gets owned somehow and it starts sending spam, you'll get blocked. Or if your device gets turned into a proxy, it'll be blocked very
This was an
sure.
old idea, right? Where you could quarantine, where the ISP could quarantine you in a box, put you in a box, and you can actually,
The only problem is if you're a business, they will not quarantine you because, they can't cut your internet as a business. So that typically leads to other fun things like ransomware deployments. But if you're a home user, you'll be cut from the internet very quickly if your device gets hit with something loud. If it gets turned into an orb network, I think there's chances it will survive for some time. But different problems. It was today that I saw news. What's the replacement? Ubiquity, right? I guess that's what they want you to use in the States. I saw in the news that Pussy Riot was out protesting in front of Ubiquity because they are supporting the Russian war because their routers are used in Russian drones. Some kind of, we discussed this story before. And I was thinking like, that's funny. Your government wants you to use Ubiquity, but then there's Pussy Riot coming for Ubiquity. So I don't know.
Yeah. You guys got a few more minutes? I got one last story. This Symantec / Carbon Black by Symantec, by Broadcom, whatever they are. I don't know what they name it now.
The Spiegel, not the website.
No, they published a new report on a new infostealer malware called Spiegel, Speagle. Don't know what the significance of that name is, but a .NET malware that hijacks legitimate Cobra DocGuard document security software, which is made by a Chinese company. But buried in there is like one variant specifically hunts for documents related to Chinese ballistic missiles, searching for keywords like Dongfeng 27, cruise missile, hypersonic, thermal protection system, warhead, composite material, and so on. It's a pretty narrow intelligence target costing. You looked at this, like who would be behind this thing and why would you name it Spiegel?
I don't know what first of
there?
all, I don't know what is SP Eagle guy. I see what you mean.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking like Beagle, more in the Charles Darwin's ship Beagle. I don't know. We need to ask someone at Symantec Carbon Black Security why they chose the name. I looked at the samples. There are a few samples available on VirusTotal. They're all obfuscated with something called .fuscator, which is kind of tricky, like to detect reliably, to be able to catch the thing inside, so the malware itself, without flagging all .fuscator packed binary, can be a bit tricky. I thought it was interesting here that it's possible that this discovery is related to a Chinese CERT report that they pushed last year, I think it was. It's one of those that I tried to translate with ChatGPT back in the days, and it refused. If you remember, we discussed this issue before. It was woke and didn't want to translate the official government documents from Chinese. It can only give me a summary, and I was like, what the hell? So it was one of those. What is interesting is I think that those CN CERT reports did not have IOCs. They had like two out of an IP address. They were showing only the first 2 bytes, and everything else was obfuscated. So props and shout outs to Symantec for actually discovering the real thing behind those Chinese CERT reports. On the other hand, I wonder if Chinese CERT has a lot more data on this. I mean, it looks like they've been investigating it for a year or so. Who could be behind it? 2 suspects come to mind: Western nations and perhaps India. We know India has been targeting China before quite actively, dropping elephant and the likes. We've seen them very active in against Chinese military targets, interest in ballistic missiles and other military targets before. So hard to say. I don't see any kind of direct evidence that it's either of those, but those are like probably the suspects here.
Did we get IOCs and
there's
hunting
samples?
telemetry?
Yeah, there's IOCs and samples on VirusTotal. I think 4 samples, if I remember correctly, from 2 generations. The .fuscator thing is a bit annoying, and like I said, doing a reliable Yara signature can be very tricky. But this is for sure. It's an interesting. Even the fact that this malware is a .NET binary makes you wonder. But I think that back in the days, all the super top threat actors, how do you recognize they're like top threat actors? They use virtual file systems. They use 0 days. They write kernel code. They have exploits, kernel exploits. They hide in the registry. They use Lua, things like that. But
it's good to hear from Symantec.
Nowadays, you need to swap. You need to swap these TTPs. So then you need to do Golang, Rust, .NET. Like otherwise, everyone will immediately catch you. Like, haha, these guys are hiding in the registry with the VFS and loading through a kernel driver. It must be equation again. So you need to be very agile. You need to be adaptable and do this kind of guerrilla style agile development with .NET implants and obfuscate them with the .fuscator.
I remember back in the day, Symantec used to be an important partner at documenting these things, and then they went quiet for a bit. So from my side, is our friend Vikram still over there?
Yeah, for sure he is there, and I
Liam Morchu.
disagree a
Still
bit
there as
that
well.
they went
Okay.
quiet. I think they're not quiet at all. I mean, they've been publishing like constantly, but somehow maybe we didn't cover
We don't talk
most
about
of
them
their
on this show.
reports.
We're terrible
But
at
they do publish a lot of interesting things, like muddy water. I think they recently published another very interesting muddy water related report, so Iranian related stuff that had a lot of cool things in it. And over the years, like if you just look back to maximum 2 years, they did publish a lot of interesting things, new stuff. Like whenever they drop something, like it can be like super interesting new stuff. I'm like, nice.
Good. Shout out to those guys. Liam Omorchu. He did a lot of the work and the original work on Stuxnet. Vikram Thakur and these guys used to come out to SAS and share their work with us. So shout out to those guys. I apologize for missing. Costin, you got to bring these things to the show a little more. Want to anything to add to this at all?
I'll do my best.
No, I mean, it sounds super interesting. It just reminds me, Kosin Obator, right?
Obator.
Like just getting a random sort of info stealer sort of doing interesting shit. But who knows? Who knows? All right.
I would be curious what others can find. You know, I wasn't able to find much more because again I think these are very, very targeted. So unless you have some user base in China, you'll have a hard time finding more. But I'm like really curious what others can find if they choose to dig this story. But I guess some other people will just choose to stay away from it simply because of the potential risk of friendlies involvement.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
The same old same, right? Same old same.
Same old same. Juanito, close the show with some shout outs, please. Any plugs? Anything happening in your life?
Lots happening in my life, but
tell us.
So no. So
opera.
yes.
Opera. We're going to opera
things.
Tomorrow.
Oh, what are you guys gonna see?
This
Embassy
time the
parties.
barber. We're seeing the barber of Seville.
Fascinating. You see,
what
Ryan, we're gonna get you. First,
I don't know
what that is.
First, Ryan will watch the Barbie movie. Then we will take him out to the opera. No, it's sort of interesting times all around. First of all, so house cleaning things and important things, right? Conference is coming up. Black Hat Asia is coming up. We've got Echo Party
Where
Miami,
is
as I've
that
mentioned
in
several
Singapore?
times. Yeah, Singapore. Okay. And PivotCon, which if you didn't get your ticket already, well,
it's too late.
We'll let you know
why
how
are we
it goes.
promoting PivotCon? I mean, you can't get a ticket now, right?
Because it's cool, and you should have gotten the ticket. If you wanted a ticket, you should have gotten a fucking ticket. So, just because you didn't get it doesn't mean we won't support our friends over
No, I'm
at
just saying that happens in May. The agenda is live. I'm sharing it here. Some familiar names. I see some interesting keynotes. Shout out to Greg Lesnovich, Nicole Fishbein, Colin Crow, like a lot of the Michael Horka. Julian. So we know it's a pretty strong agenda. You can't get a ticket now, but pay attention.
Redacted NCSL.
A lot of redacted stuff.
What was
there.
that? Go further down a bit. NC. No.
Too far.
Go back a bit. NCSC.
NCSC-NL.
crew redacted. Who is NCSC-NL? Also known as the Dutch.
The Dutch.
Fancy redacted. There's a couple of redacted talks. Pretty good, strong agenda. Congratulations to Pasquale and the folks over there.
Bart.
And Bart managing that process.
It's going to be a fun one. It's going to be interesting. Echo Party Miami coming up. If folks, still in a good place to kind of jump in. Also, I guess it's time, right? LabsCon call for sponsors is open. We're sort of already rounding up some of the folks. Definitely appreciate the support. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be an important one. It's going to be the last one. So let's make sure that we get sort of folks involved and make it a proper celebration. So appreciate all the support folks have jumped on with that. And then, guys, look, with this whole RSA thing and everything we've been discussing, I think it's easy to get kind of hopeless. I'm not going to give my usual spiel about maintaining hope. I actually think that there's a lot of interesting work in front of us. I wrote something about it. I'll probably publish it this week. But the important thing is precisely what we discussed earlier during this podcast, which is, look, the foundations have been rotten this whole time. The company structures and the finances have been rotten this whole time. We knew this wasn't going to solve things. We've never been allowed to actually just focus on finding solutions that are actually solutions, that are solving problems that we security folks think are important. And something meaningful here is, Ryan was joking about how, AI people have no security understanding and no background. I think interestingly, security people are proving to be some of the best AI folks and some of the best enthusiasts for getting involved in AI projects and large architecture stuff. And it's great to see. I don't think it's a coincidence. And we should be at the forefront of how this should get shaped going forward. It's a new computing paradigm. We have been crying for almost 30 years about the fact that security was not a part of how we built computing, right? It's been something that's been tacked on. Every product has been a thing that we just wanted to see if it could work. And then you tried to tack on security. And it turns out that it never really worked out well that way. But that's what it took to get us to here. Now you're getting to be in a position to re-engineer and re-implement and come up with new ways to do things. And I think rather than sitting around complaining about the idiots that may not be doing things the way we think they should be done, it's a pretty good time to go be those idiots and be dumb enough to try something new and see if it works and see if, that crazy idea that you had, well, it doesn't take that much to work out. Look at ENT.ai, right? Like Brandon Dixon and Steve Ginty are very competent people, but I don't know how long they've been working on this, but they've built something amazing very, very quickly. And I think that's precisely proving the point, right? Like there's nothing keeping you folks from building some cool shit. So if you've got a good idea, stop crying,
Now's the time.
Get out there, build some cool shit, show us that it works, show us why it didn't work, right? Like show us, experiment. And now's the time to restructure and rejigger this thing. In 5 years, I don't want to hear people crying about how they built it, this, whatever. Like we were here. We were here and we had the resources. So you can't cry about that anymore. So get your shit together, people. Get to work. Get to fucking work.
But not only that, think about AI debt in 5 years and the debt we're leaving for the future when we're starting to connect all these things and all these identities, and what will be left behind on the floor when after people finish their experiments and abandon it, how many of those agents are going to still have access to certain things? And start thinking about those things at a deeper level. Yeah. Otherwise, we're going to get 10 years from now talking about AI debt and technical debt that was left behind. And it's just like, we're here. We have an opportunity to build it right. And that's where I'm worrying it's running away from us.
Yep.
Kostin, any closing shout outs?
You know me. I don't have any friends because I spend all my time developing TLP.
I don't have any friends,
I'm kidding. I know there's a lot of good people doing God's work, very interesting research work. I don't want to go into details, but they clearly know what I mean, and kind of looking forward to see when they bring that to market. I think it will be very, very exciting. And otherwise, it's kind of quiet around here until PivotCon. There's no big events, no big conferences. So I'll see hopefully some of you at PivotCon, and then targeting hopefully Virus Bulletin later in the year. No Black Hat Asia for me this year, maybe next year. Yeah, I think traveling around this time with the conflict in the Middle East, it's kind of ruining my favorite route. I just love to go to Asia through Qatar, through Doha was my favorite route. I think that is a bit disrupted, and by the looks of it, things are gonna escalate in the next day. So let's see how that goes. But basically, hope to see some of you soon at PivotCon. Hopefully, Virus Bulletin.
For all of you folks traveling, and traveling is a part of your job, not only internationally but even locally here.
With a bus.
Yeah,
sometimes in a bus.
Story. No, even flying locally here, it's an adventure of long lines and TSA pre-check situations. So just stay safe, everyone. I mean, there's just too much going on. I don't know how you tell someone to stay safe, but I don't know. Keep your awareness high. That's our show for this week, guys. Thank you guys for hanging out.
Ciao. Bye bye.
Bye.